Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the West Fargo City Commission meeting for June 7th. Before we start this evening, I'd like to make a couple points. Please turn off your cell phones so we're not interrupted by that, with the exception of Chief Fuller and Chief Ordinance. Obviously, they can keep their phones on. The other thing is if you're here to speak on a particular item on the regular agenda this evening, if you would please notify Emily here so I make sure that I get everybody, and you will be able to speak on the item when the agenda item comes up. So just so we make sure that we don't miss anybody. And this is Emily right now at the podium. She normally sits right over here. With that, please join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next order of business to approve the order of the agenda. Commissioners, it has been distributed. It has been distributed to the public.
I would make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Jurdevig. It's been moved to approve the agenda as presented for Monday, June 7th. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Olson. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item D is the approval of the minutes of the May 3rd, 2021 West Fargo City Commission meeting. They have been presented to the Commission and to the public.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of May 3rd, 2021 of the West Fargo City Commission meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item E is the building permit report. It's pages 7 through 10 in your packets. It has been distributed. If there's any questions, we'll call on the planning and zoning people to respond. Commissioners, any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdevig seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permit report, pages 7 through 10, as distributed. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next order of business is the consent agenda. There are items A through N on the consent agenda. It has been in the Commissioner's packets and it has been distributed to the public.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdevig seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda, items A through N, as presented. Pages 11 through 84. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We are now moving on to the regular agenda. Item number 1 is with Chief of Police Dennis Otterness. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Commission President Dauer and members of the Commission. Just wanted to come before you for just a brief time tonight and thank you on behalf of the men and women of the West Fargo Police Department for your support. Overwhelming support over the course of the last 3 weeks since we tragically lost Lieutenant Gustafson on May 18th. In addition to thanking you, I want to send out a special thank you for all the support and compassion that the citizens of West Fargo have provided. We continue to receive gifts and donations of food and water and all kinds of treats at the police department as recently as last week. So our community has really been supportive throughout this tragic time. And so a special thanks to the citizens of West Fargo as well. So in addition to that, I think it's important, again, to publicly recognize some of the agencies that played a real big part in in helping our police department process this tragedy. Certainly through the days that immediately followed, and that would include Cass County Sheriff Jesse Johnner, the Fargo Police Department and Chief Dave Zabalski, and the North Dakota Highway Patrol and Captain Brian Niewind. You're probably aware that between those three agencies, they covered all of our shifts in the city of West Fargo for the 48 hours that followed Adam's passing, and then again during the time that the funeral was going on, so all of our staff, both our sworn staff and our civilian staff, could attend the funeral for Lieutenant Gustafson. So in addition to that, I want to thank Moorhead Chief Shannon Monroe and the Clay County Sheriff Mark Empting. They stood watch a great deal of time at the funeral home and also at the Gustafson residence, and we really appreciate their support as well. In addition to FM Ambulance, all the peer support team members from the Fargo Police Department, certainly our West Fargo Police Department Chaplain Corps, Vern and Casey Bardson were instrumental in taking care of and loving on all of our police officers and staff during this really difficult time. So there's just a number of people that have really played a big role in helping the staff, all of our staff, again, both our sworn staff and our civilian staff, kind of process and get through this tragedy. And we are a resilient group in the police department, and we are moving forward, as difficult as that is, after you lose somebody of such caliber as Adam Gustafson. So just again wanted to publicly thank you, the Commission, for all the support, and the citizens of West Fargo.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Commissioners? On behalf of the community, I couldn't tell you how proud I was of the manner of which the actual event went down. Mrs. Gustafson and her beautiful children, and the support that you gave that family, and Adam's father was there, and I couldn't have been prouder of our department and the manner of which you conducted yourself and how you honored a great person and a great lawman. So hats off to you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 2 is a public hearing in the first reading of the Stockyards First Edition, rezoning from agricultural to heavy industrial. Lisa Sankey, planner, City of West Fargo. Lisa?
Sorry about that. Thank you, President Dardis and Commissioners. This application was received in order to plat and rezone the old central livestock property for sale and development. The property is proposed to be developed into 11 heavy industrial lots with access via a north-south street from 12th Avenue and 7th Avenues north, and access is also proposed via 9th Street Northwest and Cass County 19 on the proposed Lot 4, which lines up with access on the west side. A 100-foot riverbank control line is required for the property abutting Sheyenne Street. Southeast Cass Water Resource District has also requested a setback along Drain 21, which has been reflected on the preliminary plat. Property owners within 150 feet were notified, as well as applicable agencies and departments. Engineering indicated that they would need to verify the 100-foot building control line, as well as review the utility layout and drainage plan. Southeast Cass Water Resource District indicated that in other areas, building construction too close to legal drains has resulted in slope failure, and has requested a similar setback as to the one along the Sheyenne River. Cass County Health Department had questions regarding the existing lagoons being addressed. The applicant is in the process of draining and filling in the lagoons, and a couple of calls were received asking for more information. At their May 11th meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the rezoning and the proposed subdivision on the basis that it is consistent with city plans and ordinances with conditions of approval as listed in the staff report. This is a public hearing and first reading on the rezoning, and we are available to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is a public hearing in the first reading. At this time, I will close the regular agenda and we will move into the public hearing. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to speak on the item with regard to the Stockyards First Edition rezoning from agricultural to heavy industrial, excuse me. Anyone from the public that would like to speak to this? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to item number 2, a public hearing and first reading of the Stockyards First Edition rezoning from agricultural to heavy industrial? Sir, please step up. We'd invite you up. If you would, please, step to the microphone and introduce yourself, and please tell us your West Fargo address.
My name is Wilbert Buck. This is my wife, Kathy,
Welcome.
and we live at 1000 Riverwood Drive in West Fargo. And my concern is they're grinding concrete right directly across from my house, and there's so much dirt, and we've got pictures to prove it, that you can't even breathe outside. And we weren't notified. What's heavy industrial? What's that consist of?
Lisa, do you have the definition, or Megan, someone? So let's answer these people's questions as they come up, please. Tim Soberg, Assistant City Administrator, former Planning and Zoning Commissioner.
I just had it pulled up, so I'm gonna assist Megan and Lisa on that as much as I can. So the concrete crushing, Mr. President, that is happening right now is conditional use within that district. So what they're doing right now is, if it were a permanent use, would not be a permitted use. What we have been told by the owner is that this is part of the demolition of the site, and so as part of their demolition permit, we're requiring mitigation measures for that. It was found out by us of what the impact has been in that neighborhood on Friday. They have a tremendous amount of demolition there from the years of the stockyards. So they're pulling up all that concrete and piling it and crushing it, and they'll disperse of it. It happens to be part of what this company does that owns this, so for them it's second nature to do that. We're going to use that demo permit to ensure that they're using watering, changing their hours of operation. So we had them stop over the weekend, and they're working with the inspection administrator to determine the best way that they can mitigate that. If they plan to do that as a permanent use on that site, it would require a conditional use permit whereby there'd be another public hearing. They'd come before both Planning Commission and City Commission, and property owners within 350 feet would be notified, removing any right-of-way. So property owners, most of those property owners within Chateau Cheyenne across the river would be notified of that if they do propose that as a permanent use. It was very dry, very hot, and very windy on Friday, so it was a mess up there.
So has the contractor then agreed to use water to keep the dust down? Was it in operation today?
We were under the impression that it would not be in operation today. Our inspection administrator went out there today at 4 and said that they were hauling in some stuff over to the excavation incorporated site, which does have a conditional use permit to do some crushing. I believe they were moving around some more cement at the stockyards, but we aren't aware of any actual crushing operation happening today.
You folks live across the road. Was there crushing?
They have been crushing today.
They had been?
They have not used water. They put a pipe down into the river. They had a generator running for approximately 20 minutes this morning. And they are not just crushing their own concrete. Dakota Underground trucks have been unloading concrete there too. I can see straight from my windows right into there. And if other people are doing that, where'd they get the permit? We weren't notified.
I would say the applicant is here as well, if there's any questions that they can answer.
Okay. Before we go to the applicant, Commissioner Olson has a question.
But you had asked what heavy industrial is, and that hasn't been answered yet. So could we answer that?
Well, that's what we'd like to know. Are they gonna start a concrete plant there, or what are they gonna do?
Yes, sir. Mr. Soberg?
Again, Mr. President, heavy industrial has a number of uses that are available. Concrete crushing is not a permitted use by right. It would be a conditionally permitted use whereby a second process would have to come forward. They've not entered that. We've not gotten an application for that as a conditionally permitted use.
To this gentleman's point, the conditional use permit was for the demolition of the materials that are at the stockyards. This lady and gentleman has just said that Dakota Underground is hauling additional
Absolutely.
materials in. Is that part of the conditional use permit that you have issued?
No.
So that's in violation of the conditional use permit? Is that?
That was, the crushing of concrete on site for the demolition, we can deal with. So we could deal with a demolition permit that could address that. If they're hauling things onto the site from outside and actually doing a crushing operation, and that as a use on the site, that's not been applied for, nor, if it were, it would come before through a different process.
Okay.
Tim,
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. Tim, how long is that permit good for? Like, they're just I'm assuming
It's a demolition permit.
Yes.
We don't have a term to it. We
Well,
can
once they're
set
done
that term up
demolition,
if we,
Is that supposed to be done, or is there an intent to continue to crush rock forever? Do we know
it
that?
would only be crushing of what their demolition. So
Right, so
the
when it's
demolition of
over.
the cement that's there for the old stockyards, that would be part of that demolition permit. If they're bringing in anything outside of that, that's not part of that demolition permit, they wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay.
It's a hard thing to police, I'll say that.
Mr. Mayor.
Sir, is your heavy industrial question been answered to your satisfaction?
I'm gonna pull it up too, Mr. President, as well.
You know, like, we can't even go out and sit on the deck, you know, or,
I'm well aware of the conditions last Friday. There were a number of residents that called me, and we got staff involved, and that's why it was shut down over the weekend. And I was assured that there was going to be water used today, and so
didn't.
I'm very disappointed to hear that it has not been.
the wind fortunately came from another direction, but I could see through the trees, and it was just one cloud of dust.
I wouldn't have wanted to been on the other side of Seventh.
Okay.
That would have been horrible.
Commissioner Jurdevik.
I guess I just want to make sure that your question is answered, because this is about rezoning. And so the concrete crushing is a temporary thing.
Right.
You asked what is heavy industrial, and I
Yeah,
still
that's
don't
what we'd
believe
like
we have
to know.
answered that question.
What is it?
So, I think that is the question that,
They've got it up on there. If we changed it
Can't
to
read it, no.
to the projector, you could read the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have it in front of you. Permitted uses, industrial uses allowed in the LI district, which is the light industrial district. Manufacturing and similar type industrial operations consistent with the purpose of the district. Grain elevators and feed mixing and grinding plants. Accessory uses clearly incidental to the principal use, off-premise signs. And, number 6, I'll let you read that. Number 7, other uses, listed but similar to the permitted uses above and consistent with the stated purposes of this district. So, this is a standard zoning district. Heavy industrial uses are consistent with the area, south of this, west of this. We've had this issue in the past where if there's those conditionally permitted uses, we've looked at how we can mitigate any issues to the properties to the east, which there's a small residential enclave kind of surrounded by a lot of industrial type uses. So, again, that's really what we're talking about today. Commissioner Jurdevig, you're right, the changing of the zoning.
So it hasn't been determined.
It's
Commissioner Simmons.
currently agricultural. No, it's not determined.
Tim, I think the question that I would ask if I were them is really, how long is this gonna last, crushing, and then when is that gonna be done? Isn't that what you kinda wanna know?
Yep.
So can we get an
The way
answer?
they're hauling in, they'll never get done.
Yeah, well, can we, that's,
The applicant, I think, would be the
okay,
best.
maybe he could tell us, 'cause I think that's what you really wanna know, right? When is
Right.
this gonna be done?
'Cause I followed a truck literally right up
Okay.
there.
Okay. Folks, why don't you have a chair? We're going to call on the contractors here. Tim, is that you said? Okay, gentlemen, please step to the microphone, state your name and address, please. Good evening, welcome.
Yep, hello Commissioners. Eric Murray with KPH Incorporated, and our address is 9530 39th Street South, Fargo. So we do not have Dakota Underground coming into our site at all. Dakota Underground is a separate contractor that has their own pit. We do have red trucks, so maybe they're getting miscommunication that it's our trucks. We're not hauling any more debris or demo in. We're hauling clay to the site to help build the site up and fill it. So those trucks are actively coming in. We do have 2 haul trucks that are moving on site that are picking up material and bringing it over to the location where we're crushing it at. Last Friday was a horrible day. It was hot, windy, the winds are right out of the west. We stopped production at around noon, 1 o'clock on Friday. We have since got a pump set up in the river that's pulling water out of the river, that's hitting with spray nozzles on the crushing plant, that's knocking down the dust. That is definitely helping a lot. But our haul trucks driving back and forth are creating also a lot of dust, just with how dry it is out there. So we have a water truck that comes through about every 2 hours that hits that area and waters it down and wets it. It's helping, but it is still very, very dusty. We can probably all agree there needs to be some rain. That would help a lot.
Thank you. Questions for the gentleman?
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. So where is the crushing plant actually located?
It's located about where the old lagoons were at.
Is that mobile or not? Is it I've never seen it, I guess.
Yeah, it's on tracks.
Is it something that could be moved further away from the neighborhood? Further away from that, that lot end to?
Yes,
like
but
to the west?
We're putting it on that property because that's the property that KPH owns. So we want the material on that parcel of property once it gets rezoned and approved.
So the crushed material is going to be stored on your property?
Correct.
Thank you, sir. Additional questions, Commissioner?
So whose property is it to the west of you? You mean that's not?
It'd be GS5, which is a member of Five Guys that own the rest of the stockyards.
The investment group.
Okay.
The investment group, correct.
Commissioner George?
I just have a comment. So, for me personally, I feel like neighborhoods always need to come first. Where people live should be our priority. I don't like putting heavy industrial right next to an existing neighborhood at all. And I feel like a theme that we're going to see all evening is there are things happening prior to it even coming to us. And that's what I see here. This is already happening. We haven't approved the rezone. And there's an assumption tonight that that rezone is going to happen. I don't care for that at all. So that's my opinion.
Commissioner George, thank you.
I have one.
Please, Commissioner Olson.
It was brought up by Commissioner Simmons as to how long do you anticipate crushing?
Yeah.
And how long does that take?
Yeah, it's probably going to be anywhere between a month to maybe 5 to 6 weeks, depending on if the crusher can run every day, if it doesn't break down. But that's how much product is sitting there right now. It's about 30,000 ton of concrete.
Question for you with regard to the water pump into the river. Are you satisfied with the amount of dust it's knocking down in the actual crusher, with the way that apparatus operates, or is that dust greatly diminished from last Friday? Because last Friday was horrible.
Yes, agreed. Yes, it's 100 times better than what it was from Friday.
So, is there any consideration that you could give that because of the dry conditions that we have, where you have a water truck, and I'm assuming you're using river water, you're not buying water?
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
That the frequency of the trucks on the road that you're doing the hauling could be a little bit a greater frequency?
Yes, we could definitely do that.
Okay. You'll commit to that?
Yes.
Sir, thank you. Commissioners, anything else? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the Stockyards First Edition rezoning from agricultural to heavy industrial? Sir, please step up. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. I'm Steve Norlock. I live at 410 Riverwood Drive, and it's just like this other couple that come up here. Yeah, we're breathing air that is hazardous to our health. I mean, you can't want to breathe concrete dust and the dust out there. That is terrible for your lungs. And I live right, if you go into Old Stockyard Road and you go all the way to the end, there's an excavating plant there that I've been trying to get something done on for years. And they're hauling concrete in all the time for this fall to start grinding again. And when they come in with their belly dumps, it's a cloud of dust. It's odd. There's no call for it. you know, I'm sorry, there just ain't. So I just wanted to let you know, where I live and my complaint.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank
Questions
you.
of the gentleman? Anyone? Thank you, sir. I'm sorry,
I have a
Commissioner
question,
Wilson.
but it's not for the gentleman.
Okay.
I'm just not, I'm curious as to where the actual crushing is taking place. It's not taking place on the,
There's 2 units.
that's not being rezoned, it's taking place off
There's
site of that?
there's another contractor out there that does have a permit to crush. Is that right, Mr.
Or is it
Silver?
off to the, a little bit to the east?
West? East, yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir. South and east,
that's not actually on the stockyard property.
correct.
The
Right there.
current permitted crushing operation is right where my mouse is at
Right.
here,
Okay.
south of the Sheyenne River. That's, been permitted for, I don't know, Lisa, maybe
A long term.
12 years, 15 years?
Didn't we put requirements on that one too, though?
Were there any requirements of those folks, Tim, back when the permit was, or the zoning was
At least looked
approved?
into that.
So in 2009, we approved a concrete crushing operation for excavating ink. The stockpiles were limited to 30 feet in height to reduce potential impacts to area properties. No equipment storage, operation, or stockpiling should occur within the 100-foot riverbank control line. The concrete crushing plant was to be located directly east or south of the crushed concrete stockpile, and the hours of operation were from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. We received a complaint about excavating ink from property owners when I notified the property owners regarding the stockyard subdivision, and code enforcement went out and spoke to excavating ink, and they had indicated they hadn't at that point started up their operation, but they indicated it was dry and they were going to, you know, they had been watering down the piles of concrete that they had there. So our code enforcement individual is keeping an eye on the excavating ink property, and there were conditions for approval for that one.
I'd make a suggestion if I could, and that would be that our codes enforcement officer also go visit with those folks with regard to the, you know, the distance that they're still traveling to take it to their facility, of the possibility of watering the road also. We need to do whatever we can to mitigate the dust that's being created by this industrial process.
I guess one question I would ask that is just now, maybe I'm a little slow, so I apologize, because I know they've already sat down, but, you know, the complaint we're talking about is one that is going to last 4 to 6 weeks, but the discussion we're having is about rezoning. So I guess I would ask both parties that were up here to talk, you know, do you have concerns about the rezoning of this property long-term? Because short-term, I mean, I think the contractor will do a better job to solve that problem, but I mean, tonight's discussion is about the long-term impact of rezoning this property, and I guess I want to know if there's any concern from either property owner in that regard.
Please feel free to join us back at the
And I
podium.
apologize if I'm making you walk back up. And you don't have to, but.
Well, he just said that he has a truck out there that they're filling and watering this down. To the best of my knowledge, that's a lie. I used to water down a racetrack. And we filled by a city hydrant. And it took, half hour or something like that to fill a 3,000-gallon tank. They've got 1.5 inches or 2 inch at the very most hose down into the river, and they're going to fill a truck with that. They're going to run that pump all day long until they fill a truck. Because I wasn't born yesterday, and I sit out there in my back shed sometimes and I just watch what's going on there, and there was no truck today. I'd like to see it. I'd like to have him even describe it. I don't think he could.
Thank you, sir.
I don't think he answered the question, though. Yeah,
Commissioner Jurdevig is absolutely correct. The item before us this evening is with regard to the rezoning of this. The discussion is very pertinent because there's a residential, development that's nearby. So, all of the discussion is pertinent, and anybody that's involved in the process out there has to understand that we will continue to monitor this. I would encourage the commissioners to take a drive out there in the coming days and to observe the conditions that the public is enduring. With the understanding, these people do have a conditional use permit, and we're going to rely on KPH to do the responsible things that they do. They've been a responsible contractor for a long time, the city of West Fargo. But at the same time, we have to also monitor that when there's stockpiles of crushed concrete, the dust blows from there. So we're going to have to ask the other contractor that's out there to also consider some type of mitigation to keep the dust down. Okay? Would that be a acceptable summary with the rest of the commissioners? Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I guess I just would like to make the comment, or even have maybe someone make it to me, that kind of the whole point of this process, it is bad, but it's to clean the area up. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're demolishing, they're cleaning it up and getting rid of this stuff. So, yes, they have to abide by the rules, but hopefully within a month to 5 weeks, it will be all cleaned up and that will no longer exist. And I'm hoping that's, unless I'm on the wrong thought process here, that is where our end goal, is it not? To get it all cleaned up and ready for development, so to speak. So, no matter what we do, at some point, this has got to be cleaned up. We've got to do something here. We can't just let it sit. That's not the answer.
So, everyone involved, we're going to ask the city staff, our enforcement officer, to check out on a regular basis, daily basis. And this commissioner will be out there, and I would encourage my other fellow commissioners to do the same. So again, we're back to the heavy lifting. The rezoning of the Stockyards First Edition, we have to determine whether or not we're going to approve or disapprove of the first reading. Commissioners?
Are we still in the public hearing?
No, my apologies. I closed the public hearing. I asked 3 times for Sir, okay? Please step forward. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Richard Ramsey. I'm at 908 Riverwood Drive. I live next door to Wilbert and Kathy. I think, we've covered a lot when it comes to what they are doing and what we're living through over in our neighborhood. Health-wise, no doubt it's not healthy. From a financial standpoint, it's also not great. I've got personal projects going on in the backyard. I've had to redo them 3 times. Sealant doesn't exactly dry best when dirt is constantly hitting it. I understand, we had high winds. Friday was a bad day. I actually waited till Friday to call and complain. Thursday was just as bad as Friday. I just don't think as many people called to complain about it. There is a small pipe that is, being ran into the river. I actually watched them install it. My backyard is right there where they're doing the crushing. There's a big, piece of equipment with rocks stacked quite high. And I don't know about the 12 o'clock quitting time because they're still going into, past 5 o'clock, so they're still going pretty hard at it. I mean, I know they have to clean it up, and I know that's the overall goal that they have to do. 5 weeks to 1 month is probably more like 2 months.
Can you clarify for me which contractor? Which of the 2 contractors?
Well, I live at 908 next door to Wilbert and Kathy, and right across the river is, I don't know which contractor is doing it. I don't,
Tim,
But-
if you pull up the map.
but I might be, I'd say, 60 yards from where they just put in the two pump.
So are you talking about the long-term contractor that's been there, or the portable contractor that, crushing equipment that just came in?
It would have to be the crushing equipment. It would have to be the crushing equipment that just came in,
Okay.
because that equipment was not
Thank you for clarifying
existent.
that. Commissioner Jurdevig.
So once that is done in 4 to 6 weeks, or let's assume 6 weeks,
Yeah.
do you have long-term concerns with the rezoning to heavy
The
industrial?
only concern that I have, is it going to be, and I think it's already been touched on, is it going to be a permanent commercial or zoning, not zoning, but a permanent
Permitted process.
process? Are they gonna turn into, a a constant, dirt and gravel ready-mix company where they sell it, Or is this land going to be developed commercially and they're going to pave it and there's going to be businesses there? That I don't have a problem with. But something that's going to continually pose a threat or even limit us from living our lives in our neighborhood, that I would have an issue with. Because at the present moment in time, from now until 5 to 6 weeks, 2 months, our kids can't even go outside and play in the backyard. I've lived there since January, and I have more dirt and dust accumulation in my garage, which is sealed up quite well. In 2 days, the equipment that I have stored in there is just covered in dirt.
Commissioner George.
So to clarify this, you said you're okay with businesses, but this is not being zoned commercial. This is being zoned heavy industrial, which to me says noise, loud, dust, dirt, crushing. I would not want that in my backyard. So
I'm a little less, I guess noise really doesn't bother me. I know I'm not my neighborhood either. There's probably plenty of my neighbors that would not enjoy all that loud noise. I'm more concerned with the health ramifications of everything, or what it's going to cost us, because with the way things are going, with the amount of dirt that's even accumulated on my condenser outside for my air conditioning unit, inside of another week I'll be replacing filters maybe once every other week, just to keep from ruining our system. Not to mention, like I said, the things that I have stored in my garage that, maybe I don't want to keep a tarp over every single day to prohibit it from having, a half inch, worth of dirt, which currently is what's on it. Just in the matter of 2 days, Thursday and Friday. And that's just 2 days. The letter that went out, unless it came before January of this year, I received no such letter at our address at 908, letting us know. Wilbert and Kathy also, I don't know if they touched on that, they have also told me they did not receive a letter stating what the plan was or what was going to be going on.
Do we have record as to whether or not these folks were notified? All right. Anything else that you'd like to share with us this evening?
No, I think I already touched on what it may or may not be costing. Like I said, I had to redo, the sealants and I'm a new owner there, so I'm constantly trying to do work, but it's, I had to quit, I think Friday around noontime, because the dirt was just going everywhere, and, and I know that they have a job to do, and they have to get that done. But in 5 to 6 weeks or a month, are we, assuming that that's the timeline, which almost never happens, are we just supposed to not live or go outside? And I know Wilbert and them, they probably didn't touch on the of what it might be costing them as well, but they have hundreds of plants that they plant, and, I mean, they're no longer even green, you know. So, I think that's it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Solberg has, sir? Sir?
Previous owner.
Mr. President, I just wanted to verify, we did send it to 908 Riverwood Drive to a Stephen Colby, who is apparently the previous owner. We pull our notification list from the county tax records, so.
Very good.
The, Bucks were notified at 1000 Riverwood Drive.
Just for his records, would you make sure that he gets a copy of the letter?
Of course.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item? We are still in the public hearings. Yes, sir.
Mike Graham, 3030 Cheyenne Riverway. I'm one of the members that invested in the property. I just want to clarify on the heavy industrial rezone that I do believe, you know, when we took it over 6 months ago, we drove out and I think there was 5 or 6 dead cattle carcasses laying throughout the property, you know, so, you know, we got to take fact of what this previous was and where we're going. And the dust problem, you know, if current zoning was ag, I do believe that the dust problem today would be worse if we were farming that property than, you know, so just, the dust is a short-term deal, you know. Get city lots out here, city streets out here, and, you know, people improving the yard with sod and whatever. I mean, it's a short-term deal. But this property is on its way up from where it was 6 months ago.
We understand that, Mr. Graham, but I would encourage you, your contractors that you're working with, you're a responsible businessman, and to encourage them to do whatever they can to mitigate the dust as best you can.
Agreed.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item? Last call for the first reading of the Stockyards First Edition rezoning from agricultural to heavy industrial. Is there anyone else? The public hearing is closed and we move back to the regular agenda. Commissioner Jurdovic.
I would have a question for Lisa. Lisa, you made the comment that they're currently draining the lagoon.
Pardon?
I think you made the comment that they were currently draining the lagoon.
The Stockyard Lagoon, yes.
Stockyard Lagoon. Where is that being drained?
It's drained into our lagoons, I believe.
Okay. So we're trying to get rid of our lagoons and we're draining more lagoons into our lagoons. I guess I'm curious what we are charging as a city for the ability to take on a massive amount.
I'll call on Mr. Matt Anvik, the Director of Public Works for the City of West Fargo. Mr. Anvik.
Yeah, Commissioner President and Commissioners, we did deal with KPH earlier this year on draining that lagoons. They did drain it and it didn't go to Fargo, and they were charged for that amount.
So it didn't go into our wet lagoons, it went directly to the City of Fargo.
Yeah, some of it might have went to ours, but
Yeah.
we're running on 3 right now, so we're all right.
Just
Very
wanted to make
good.
sure we were charging appropriately.
Thank you, Mr. Anvik. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, again, with the dust, we have to work on it, but I think the reality and the bottom line is we're trying to clean it up. That's the whole point of what we're all doing. We're trying to get this cleaned up. And so I think that once this, if it's 4 weeks or 5 weeks and we can get through this process and be on top of everybody and keep everybody in communication, I think that portion will go away and we'll move forward and get this. Again, we're trying to get it cleaned up. That's the bottom line. The only way to get it cleaned up is to rezone it and get her done properly. That'd be my opinion. So if there are no other comments on
Commissioner Olson has a comment.
I'm sorry?
Sir?
On the heavy industrial, it doesn't always mean that it's gonna be a rock crushing plant or anything like that. It could be something similar to Trail King or a manufacturing like Marvin Windows or something
Correct,
on
correct.
that line. Doesn't mean it's always gonna be dust and dirt and filth and things like that. So until something like that comes to us to be permitted, like another crushing plant, then we would deal with it at that time.
Correct.
Just wanna make sure we're all on the same thinking path. That's what I'm thinking, a heavy industrial doesn't always have to mean a crushing plant.
Mr. Solberg.
Mr. President, I do want to add to Commissioner Olson's comments, just, the city of West Fargo has added a lot of structure into our ordinances that requires buffering. So when there is a zoning district that's residential next to heavy industrial, we have buffering requirements for that. Not saying that's gonna be everything that'll be the panacea of this whole situation, but any stockpiling, crushing, some of those more heavier uses are conditionally permitted uses. So on top of any buffering, the commission will have the ability to add additional conditions at that time. So even the stockpile of materials, that can't stay there as a permanent use until they go through the conditional use permit process. Thank you.
Mr. Solberg, I would again respectfully request that our compliance officer, by your direction, spend some frequent time out there monitoring the situation to do all we can for that residential neighborhood. Thank you. Commissioners? Commissioner Simmons.
Having said that, I would make the motion that we approve second reading and final plot.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve the second reading of the final plot approval.
First reading.
First reading.
I'm sorry, what I said.
First reading,
First
yeah,
reading,
yeah.
I apologize. First,
Yeah.
but on second reading.
My apologies. Is there a second? Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the first reading of the Stockyards First Edition rezoning from agricultural to heavy industrial. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 3 of the regular agenda is the second reading and final plot approval proposed by the North Pond at the Preserve 14th Edition rezoning. Planner for the City of West Fargo, Lisa Sankey. Lisa?
Thank you. Nothing has changed since the public hearing and first reading was held on May 3rd. The request is to rezone from agricultural and plat for general commercial development on property west of Costco. Action being requested by the City Commission is second reading on the rezoning and final plat approval based on the following conditions. Number 1, a signed subdivision improvement agreement is received, a drainage plan is received and approved by the city engineer, an attorney title opinion to the City of West Fargo is received, a signed final plat is received with any necessary easements, a certificate showing taxes being current, and finally, number 6, recording of the plat and rezoning is conditioned on the applicant or its successor or assigns obtaining title to the property. This is the second reading and final plat approval, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions of Mrs. Sankey?
Make motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdevig seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the second reading and the final plat approval of the proposed North Pond at the Preserve 14th Edition rezoning. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4, final approval of a planned unit development amendment, Brooks Harbor 5th Edition. Mr. Malachi Peterson, planner for the City of West Fargo.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President and Commissioners. This property was originally zoned as a planned unit development with commercial office park district standards in March of 2016 to allow for construction of a child care facility for the Village Family Service. The village has since sold the property and it has not commenced with the previously approved plans. The applicant here tonight intends to construct a 2-rink, 62,000 square foot youth hockey arena for the Fargo Angels youth hockey team on the vacant property. The applicant has also indicated that they would like to build 3 commercial office buildings on the property as well. The applicant intends to construct the site in stages with 1 ice rink to be built immediately, with preliminary schedule for construction being attached to their application. Detailed site plan, floor plan, and building elevations have been submitted. The preliminary site plan shows a proposed 8-foot multi-use path on the south side of the property, which will connect 5th Street West to public trails and facilities on the West Fargo Park District and School District properties, which are to the west. The site also includes 187 parking spots. The developer has indicated plans to approach both the West Fargo Park District as well as the school district to enter into shared parking agreements with them. That way for events and tournaments and things of that nature, if there's any overflow parking, it would be in those parking areas. The city's landscaping standards require a buffer yard between the property and the residential uses in the south portion of the lot. Under these guidelines, along the south side, they would have the option of providing either a 20-foot buffer yard with a 6-foot architectural screen with alternating small evergreen and deciduous trees, or a 50-foot buffer yard with large evergreen trees alternated with deciduous trees. The developer in this case has opted to go with the 6-foot architectural screen and 5-foot buffer yard. Regarding the buffer requirements on the south side of the lot adjacent to Fifth Street West, according to 4-449-A, Section 9, buffer yards. Buffer yard is not required on the front side of the building, as a buffer yard shall not be required on the front of the higher intensity use, which abuts the public right-of-way. Property owners within 150 feet were notified prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, which was held on May 11th. We received multiple phone calls and emails from neighbors from the residential area just to the south of the property who were concerned about lights coming into their windows from cars that would be parking in the parking lot. They also would like to have access to the walking path that would go from the street to the park area. So that was discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. At their May 11th meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission moved to recommend approval of the PUD with staff recommendations, with the added recommendation that the screening be considered a privacy fence so that little to no light from car lights would be seen from the parking lot. The developer has since submitted a new site plan which shows that they will slant the parking spots towards the building instead of away from the building, so that if any cars parking there, the lights will be going towards the building and not towards the houses. They've also moved the location of the 6-foot fence so that it's on the other side of the property, so you basically have residential houses, walking path, fence, building. I notified all of the property owners who had reached out to us at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to let them know that this meeting would be going on tonight, and I didn't receive any comments back relating to any additional concerns.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peterson. Questions?
I have.
Commissioner Olson.
One of the emails was concerned about the location of the dumpster in the southwest corner, which would be right next to the residential area and the walking paths. Has that been addressed, or is that not a?
I believe on the new site plan it shows the fence being separating that area, so then the dumpster would be on the other side of the fence to block that viewpoint. But I haven't received any more comments from that particular residence regarding the new site plan.
I guess I was more concerned about the noise of the constant going in and out when there's events and all that, plus the possible smell and everything. And that location closest to the residents, I guess I would just one thing I was thinking of.
I had the same concern, I agree with you.
And since this is a planned unit development, you as the city commission have a pretty wide variety of things that you can, conditions that you can impose on the PUD as well. So if you want to make that a recommendation or a recommendation, or condition of approval, you could do that.
I realize the garbage has to be picked up and everything, and it'll be sanitation trucks coming in and out. I just, looking at the site plan here, I don't know where they would put it.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have to give up some parking spaces somewhere else, or put, just a thought.
I mean, it looks like it could almost go next to that southeast corner building. And it'd be farthest away from the residential properties, but still have access.
Any other questions for Mr. Peterson? Thank you. Again, we're discussing the final approval of a planned unit development amendment to Brooks Harbor Fifth. No, we're not. We're on the second reading and final plat approval of proposed north pond at the reserve. 14th edition. My apologies.
I think it's the next one.
No, we're on number,
The
item 4.
planned unit
We're
development.
on item 4.
Yeah.
Yes, we're on item 4. Commissioners?
So before making a motion then, can we,
This,
something about the dumpster, can we put that in there then? I'm with you completely. I don't love it. It's right across the street from the houses, otherwise I'm okay with it.
I think that's something we could ask the developers now if they're here or whatever, see if that's, this is a PUD, so obviously it's a, you know, we have some input as well as the citizens do, so.
Please step to the microphone and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, President, Commissioners. Jordy Christian, I'm the Rink Development Coordinator for the Fargo Angels. This project has been from the get-go just about the neighborhood and the community. So we had met with all the homeowners at that, you know, all those addresses, and for us, the big thing is parking. So we would love to have the dialogue with not only the park district, but the school. If we lose those parking spots along the southern edge of the building, that opens up some options, other sites, if the dumpster is the big concern, if we lose some parking in a different part of the site, we'd love to move that. It's a little bit difficult for, I think, people to understand the parking situation. Our current rink has 12 parking spots. So with the location, it makes for us a perfect storm of events with the school. So like when they're not operating, we're operating. It's like a tournament weekend on a Saturday, that's the only big event that we're really gonna hold. So if that is something that the city would love to discuss with us, we'd love to enter that discussion of, hey, if the dumpster is a big, you know, issue for not only the city but the residents, yeah, we'd love to look at other parts of the site we could develop that. I wanted to make one quick comment. We are no longer the Fargo Angels. We have dropped Fargo from our name. So we intend to make West Fargo our home. We have 150 kids, over half of whom live in West Fargo. So that was kind of the hope for the site, was to move our home base to the city of West Fargo. But I'm willing to answer any more questions you might have about the project. From the get-go, the neighbors, the landowner, everybody's been a great partner, the city. So we're very ecstatic about the potential long-term home for us here.
Questions for the gentleman?
I like that you're gonna put that fence buffer between the parking and the homes, because, yeah, that would have been a concern to the lights, but it sounds like that's addressed, so.
UND hockey fans are welcome, right, Jordy?
Potentially. Might have to charge them more. No, they're welcome. You know, and just the whole site, the walking path was not our idea, that was the neighbor's idea. A lot of kids have walked through that lot to get to there's a park right there. So that was completely the neighbors just saying, hey, if we can get a walking path here with a fence, this makes a ton of sense for us as well.
I participated in the planning and zoning meeting when they presented, and the planning and zoning did a great job at vetting all of these issues with regard to the privacy fence and the parking and the lights and all of that type of thing. I thought they gave them a great deal of input, and obviously it's a positive result that the neighborhood is in a more comfortable place with this now. Commissioner Simmons?
This does not go into a public meeting already? We've already done that portion of it? It's just
Yes,
a
sir.
final?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'd make a motion to approve the final plot?
Commissioner Simmons moves to
No, PUD, I'm sorry.
approve the final PUD amendment to Brooks Harbor 5th Edition. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Can we make it a condition that the dumpster isn't right across the street from the homes then? Can we add that?
Well, let's make a condition that we have additional dialogue about it. I think that the land usage and the parking lot and all of that type of thing, from afar, we shouldn't dictate that it's in the southeast corner or southwest corner.
Not.
But, additional dialogue take place.
Between the staff and, I'm okay with that, and you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. I was just
Okay.
curious if it was addressed.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion? Thank you, Commissioner. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, President Ardis.
Item number 5 is the second reading of the health ordinance revisions. Mr. Grant Larson. Good evening, Mr. Larson.
Good
Welcome.
evening, President Ardis and Commission. Grant Larson, Director of Environmental Health at Fargo Cass Public Health. Just in front of you to answer any questions for the second reading for these revised ordinances. What we're doing is we worked with Onsite Twitchell to make sure, since we license and regulate these programs in Fargo and West Fargo, they mirror each other. So it's a lot of just language changes, but there has been no changes since the first reading. That was a couple months ago, and now we're back in front of you for the second reading.
Some changes that took place at the North Dakota Legislature prompted us to do this, or it's just an upgrading?
Just an upgrade on a local level for some of these programs, but nothing driven by the state.
Okay.
A lot of times, it might be a federal thing for the food, FDA food code that's implemented in there, but mostly sometimes it's just driven by the local, what we need locally.
All right, thank you, Mr. Larson.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions, commissioners? All right.
I'll move to approve the second reading.
Commissioner Olson moves to approve the second reading of the health ordinance revisions as presented by Mr. Larson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jurdovic. It's been moved and seconded to approve the second reading of the health ordinance revisions as presented by Mr. Larson. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for joining us this evening. Item number 6 is an encroachment agreement with the City of West Fargo, pond for landscaping. Mr. Graham.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Our association down on 32nd and kind of Cheyenne, we wanted to landscape just up our entrance, and to do it right, we would kind of need to, encroach into the city property, into the pond on the east side. So, I think, I'd talked to Tim had shared some of our plans with department heads, and I had a couple different conversations with them, and I, working with Public Works on maintaining slope and understanding that, everything is at our risk. I believe that, it's a win-win for everybody. Just driving down 32nd Avenue, I think it'll be way more appealing to have more trees, vegetation, and rock, just to dress up the entrance of our development. There's 10 of us lot owners that are participating in the project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Graham. Is there any questions of Mr. Graham on this property? Commissioner George.
So will you be taking care of all the maintenance of it then going forward?
There'd be a maintenance agreement on us
Okay.
for 100% of the maintenance.
Question for Mr. Solberg. Do we have any other situations like this existing in the city of West Fargo?
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner George, we have a form that we asked the applicant to fill out. They would pay all legal duties of our city attorney to come up with an encroachment agreement. We have had situations like this in the past where they essentially do the work on city property to maintain it. Our Public Works Department doesn't have the time, resources, or money to put into the type of landscaping that they're looking at doing here, and so it provides a little bit of protection for us to make sure that they have liability on it, and our city attorney does the work and charges them so that there's no cost to the city taxpayer.
And an encroachment agreement like this does not go through planning and zoning?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Jurdovic.
I guess I'm not sure if this question might be for Dustin, but, obviously we have city utilities under one portion of this, just based off of the one handout that's in front of us. I'm just curious from a construction perspective, if, for some reason that has to be replaced, fixed, so forth, how does that work? What happens? And how big of a pain in the butt is it to our staff?
Thank you, Commissioner Jurdovic. I will try to find the tab that, thank you. There we go. Yeah, so, to start with your answer, or your question, my answer is that, I haven't had a lot of time to review this yet. So once an encroachment agreement is drafted and more of the details come forward, we'll take an opportunity to review it. But At first blush, yes, the water main that's in here would obviously have to be protected. We have to ensure that they're not gonna do anything that's gonna, impede our ability to maintain it, service it. And quite frankly, if they're putting a substantial amount of landscaping over top of it, I would imagine that we would have a lot of concerns allowing that to happen, because if we need to get in there and do something, we're gonna have to peel that off and gain that access to work. But again, I don't have the finer details of what they're doing to answer that.
So if that water line breaks in January, it becomes a major challenge for our
Correct.
city employees to remove all the landscaping.
Yeah, we have to get it, no, I mean, I'd let Mr. Anbeck answer that.
Probably a small
but-
chance of that happening, but it's...
Right, but we do have situations like this throughout the city, where we've allowed someone to build over top of our infrastructure. It's pretty common where, you know, we give it either an encroachment agreement or, you know, we allow a development to occur in similar situations, so.
I think, Dustin, that's why they call that at risk for the developer, because if something should happen, you know we have to go back and dig it up. And
Yep, and if it's substantial enough, though, we just won't allow it. You know, if we feel like we can't get the right equipment out there to service an emergency repair quickly, then we won't allow it. But I think, you know, some landscaping features are probably not gonna overwhelm our ability to do an emergency repair.
I guess that's where I'm getting at. I realize it's at risk and it's their expense if something's lost in that construction. I wanna know that if it's being serviced in January, does it make it substantially harder for our city crew to fix a water line if they are moving boulders and trees and, well, they wouldn't be moving trees, but, I guess they'd be removing them in some form.
Absolutely, yep, no, so it's a valid question, because what type of equipment's gonna be required to get our crews down into that water main? And if it's a matter of we have to clear trees and move boulders, that's potentially substantial enough for us to say no.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Scott.
I'm not
Commissioner
sure,
Olson.
I'm not sure who this would be for, but how does it affect our retention pond? With the extra vegetation there and things like that?
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. So I don't believe the intent is to change the volume of storage, if you will. We have allowed, again, some other activities to be built within our storage easement. Typically around a pond, there's the normal water surface, and we have anywhere from 30 to 55 or 60 feet of linear depth or linear feet to store the water as the rain comes. As long as they're not proposing to fill within that and displace that storage volume, we're comfortable with it. If they are proposing to do so, this has happened before. The clubhouse that's along 32nd Avenue on the west side here that services the Eagle Run Apartments, just on the north side of 32nd, they built the clubhouse over top of a retention pond. They certainly displaced the storage volume, but they excavated out another area to regain that required storage volume. So if that is the case here, if they're proposing to fill into this storage easement that we have, we will certainly require them to replace it. Does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Scott. Additional questions? Commissioner Jurdevig.
I guess I would ask my question back to Matt, since it would probably be his guys out there fixing something. I would just like to know, because I like it visually, I just want to make sure that it doesn't create some immense challenge.
Yeah, that's a great question, but for us, it really doesn't. It'll come out easy. They might just not like how it looks.
Fair enough.
But that's like Commissioner Simmons said, that's at-risk part. I mean,
I think that's called removal without regard.
yeah, I mean, if we have to, we can get in there and move it, I mean, we'll try and do the best we can, but it's gotta come out, because we gotta have to get there, so, but we would have no problem getting down
That
there.
addresses my concern.
Commissioner Simmons, you had something?
thank you, just a comment, I guess, in my opinion, anytime we get the private sector to landscape our ponds, I'm all for it, as long as there's no problems. I'm definitely I mean, you folks will do a better job, or a good job. I'm not gonna say better than us, but I'm all for it. If we can get it done and don't pay for it, I'm good for it, so. If no other questions, I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdevig seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the encroachment agreement with the City of West Fargo Pond for landscaping with Mr. Graham.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 7 is a Public Works 4th Avenue Northwest paving project. Mr. Anvick.
There we go. Give me 1 second, so we can find the right one. All right.
Excuse me, just Mr. Again, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, if there's something that you want to speak on, please contact Emily, because I'm going to keep going through the agenda, and unless I see some hands raised or Emily waving at me that there's someone else that wants public input on any item that's on the regular agenda this evening, that's the process. Please. Thank you. My apologies, Mr. Anvick. Continue.
Good evening, Commission President and Commissioners. Tonight, I'm looking for approval for a street maintenance or a paving overlay project. The location would be 4th Avenue Northwest here and Garden Avenue. These two streets here, that's just north of, that's right next to the Sheyenne River, north of Main Avenue there. These two streets are in dire straits, I guess, the conditions. There's a lot of potholes, a lot of chipping, cracking of the asphalt. If we do, nothing on this right now and go to do snow removal this winter, we're going to be taking big chunks out of this road and actually probably damaging some of our equipment. So what we're proposing is to do kind of an overlayment in-house with a Public Works street crew who's doing this work. And the total cost is about $46,000, and that would cover the materials and rental of a asphalt lay machine and a roller to do that. This is basically just one giant Band-Aid on these two streets. That should give us 5 to 10 years to do this.
Your cost is materials and rental equipment, no labor?
I didn't
just to
figure
clarify.
Yeah, no labor in that. No.
Okay. And what would be the time frame to complete a project of this size, Matt?
Depending on weather with this year, when it's going to be this dry, probably 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
That just a guess.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Anvick? Okay.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the Public Works request for 4th Avenue Northwest paving project. One additional question.
Yep.
Is this project in your in the community improvement plan? Was this item, or is this kind of an...
But it was out a few years. Originally when it came through, it just over this last winter, it really blew up and...
So it wasn't scheduled for 2021, you're moving it up because of the nature
Yeah, we're moving it up because it wasn't on the CIP. I think Dustin can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was out about 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm assuming it will remain in the CIP, because you said it's a 5 to 10 year Band-Aid, right?
Yes, depending on, we'll look at it and see, judging how long we can make that last. For right now, we don't foresee any concrete work on the sides. We think we can do any kind of drainage with the overlayment itself to not do that. And the utilities underneath are actually in fairly good shape and not needing a replacement for a little while. So if we can stretch that out, even with the chip seal, it might be 10 to 15.
I'm just wondering to make sure they have the money now.
Okay. Commissioner Simmons?
Yeah, I'm sorry. And so just for the 46,000, obviously you have that already in your budget?
This would be out of I guess it's Fund 2970. It's for Public Works and Engineering projects. There's about $350,000 in that fund that is set aside every year for kind of emergency projects that pop up like this.
Okay.
And there is enough in there to cover that.
Mr. Scott, do you have something to add on this issue?
I was just going to provide clarity on the CIP. The street itself, I don't believe we had Garden Avenue or 4th specifically getting an overlay on the CIP, but what we do have are pavement management projects identified. They're just not labeled. So I bring that up because if someone then after this goes and tries to find last year's CIP and is looking for, where does it say garden? It won't. It'll be one of our pavement management projects where we've...
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification. I think all of our commissioners understand that one. Anything else from Mr. Anvick? Thank you, sir.
I'm waiting. I'll make a motion to approve then.
Thank you, Commissioner.
We did that.
Andy already did, and I seconded it.
There's a motion
We
and
have a
second.
motion and a second
Oh, I'm
on the
sorry, I
floor.
was waiting for someone to make one.
We're still in discussion.
I
yeah.
apologize.
Public Works Fourth Avenue Northwest Pavement Project, as presented to Mr. Anbeck. We have a motion. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. I was looking at you like I was wondering. I thought you made it, but
Item number 8 is the 13th Avenue South tree planting. Mr. Anbeck, Public Works Director.
You get me twice in a row up here tonight. So for this project, this one started a few years back, so I had to get up to speed on this a little bit. So to give you a history on this one, the road on 13th Avenue there between 9th and Sheyenne was redone in about 2018. The tree planting and the hardscape wasn't included on that project at the time. It was pulled off, I think due to some changes on the design. So right now, we'd like to just kind of move forward with the tree planting. To get that going, we've had, a few people along that corridor asking when the trees were going to get planted. Our Chad Zander, our city forester, kind of designed this planting project to try and move forward. So we got about 40-foot spacing between the trees, trees spaced back from the corners, and I think it was about a total of 152 trees on this one. And then he has just a mix of, the different varieties on the boulevards and a few in the medians there going through for the whole stretch with 152 trees. Just kind of the outline of it, we did send out an RFP between engineering and forestry on April 26th, and it closed on May 10th. We did receive 5 bids, and the one contractor that was chosen was Green Earth. That cost of $61,027. The main reason they were selected between engineering and forestry is they did not have any alternative tree species listed. They had all the ones that we had specified in the RFP. I apologize that it didn't get put on there, but we do have, we did receive a letter of support from the Urban Forestry Committee in favor of this project going forward. This project was also in front of the review committee and reviewed and approved for there. If this is approved tonight, we estimate that it'll probably be done this fall because of the dry conditions. We'll probably wait till September to do that, and it should take, depending on weather, a few weeks to a month to complete. So if you have any questions.
Commissioner Olson.
I just want to clarify that the photos that you had up there are 13th Avenue, but they're from 9th Street going east to 17th Street, because that's the part we reconstructed.
Okay.
We didn't go from Sheyenne. I just want to make sure that we're clear where these are.
Okay, east to 17th, okay.
I think in the cover memo you've got from Sheyenne.
Cheyenne, yeah, I think I had the wrong way.
9th Street, but that wasn't redone. It was from 9th Street going east to 17th, I believe.
There's a little extension path.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, right, yeah, yep.
Any additional questions from Mr. Anbeck?
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Jurdovic seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the 13th Avenue South tree planting project for the amount of $61,027 to be done in the fall of 2021. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anbeck. Item number 9 is to hold a public hearing and consider a pilot application for Hebron Brick Supply Company. Lauren Orchard, Economic Development Director for the City of West Fargo. Good evening, Lauren.
Thank you, Commission President Dardis, and good evening, Commissioners. We are excited to report that we have another excellent business, Hebron Brick and Supply, hoping to relocate and expand into West Fargo through a 5-year payment in lieu of taxes or pilot. The Vice President of the company, Jean Thurston, is here this evening to answer any business-specific questions you might have. But before I welcome him up to the podium, I would like to remind the Commission and the public of how a pilot works in West Fargo and the positive impacts that would come from Hebron Brick's proposed investment. West Fargo's pilot program uses the reduction of property tax on new improvements to leverage private investment that meets the development needs of the community. To attract needed investment, the program offers successful applicants a 100% reduction in property tax on new improvements in the first 5 years following building completion, with the applicant paying $100 per year in lieu of these taxes on improvements. The pilot program has brought key businesses into West Fargo or has otherwise helped them to expand in our community, including Caterpillar, Cargill, and Bobcat, just to list a few. Hebron Brick has applied to join these successful applicants by offering to invest $5 million in a 9,814 square foot building on Christensen Drive West along the I-94 corridor, just west of the all-finished concrete building. The site selected by Hebron Brick is bisected by a gas pipeline and has an estimated $840,000 in special assessments, so this proposed investment would bring an outstanding business and building that responds to the challenges of the site while fitting the I-94 corridor overlay requirements. If the Commission were to grant a 5-year pilot as requested, the total estimated value to Hebron Brick would be $374,387.50 in return for a $5 million investment. During the term of the pilot, Hebron Brick would continue to pay existing property tax and special assessments, which currently total just over $92,000 per year. Upon completion of the pilot, the applicant would pay all taxes on the property, which we have estimated will be just over $167,000 per year. The applicant has stated that without the support of the pilot, they would be unable to complete their investment at this proposed amount on this challenged site. However, if the applicant receives the requested pilot, Hebron Brick would bring 45 employees, making an average salary of $53,000 per year by year 5. Beyond bringing these jobs into West Fargo, the proposed new location would serve as the main distribution center for wholesale brick and would bring e-commerce sales and services into West Fargo, further enhancing the sales tax benefit to the city. Due to these benefits, the city's review and preview committees, comprised of economic development, planning, public works, engineering, and fire, along with the West Fargo Parks District, have recommended approval of the project. The city's Economic Development Advisory Committee, comprised of local business representatives from 6 industries, has also recommended approval of the proposed pilot. I would now like to offer to answer any Commission questions, and we also have Jean Thurston in the audience if you have any business-specific ones before opening the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Orchard. Commissioners, questions of Ms. Orchard? This does require a public hearing, so we'll close the regular agenda item to consider the pilot at this time, and we are now in a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this issue? Sorry, folks, I got to ask that question 3 times. So, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item? Is there anyone that would like to speak on the public, considering the pilot application for the Hebron Brick Supply on Christensen Drive? Hearing no public comment, the public hearing is closed. We are back on the regular agenda. Are there any additional questions of Ms. Orchard?
I don't think so. I'd just like to make a comment if I could, Mayor.
Please. Commissioner Simmons.
Lauren, thank you, and thank you, Hebron Brick. I think this is an excellent process. This is exactly what it's designed for. Keeping in mind that, we're still going to get the existing property tax, and so this is why we do this program. I think this is a good example. So thank you. And I'll make a motion to move this forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Simmons moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the pilot application for Hebron Brick Supply Company as presented by Ms. Orchard, our Economic Development Director. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Ms. Orchard.
Thank you.
Is, the gentleman from Hebron Brick here? Would you please stand? Welcome to West Fargo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Appreciate everything. We're very excited.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item number 10 is a Color Fest report. This is a summary report presented by Lauren Orchard from our Economic Development Director, Morgan Kastner, also an Economic Development person, and Malachi Peterson, a planner. These three people worked very hard to bring Color Fest to the city of West Fargo, downtown Cheyenne Street. Please. Malachi, are you up or is Lauren up?
I'm going to try to speak into the microphone while they look for their presentation. Okay, you're good. Let me introduce you.
Thank you, Commission President Dardis and Commissioners. On Mother's Day weekend of this year, the City of West Fargo hosted our first Color Fest to celebrate our community and the renewal of our downtown area at the Yards. The Economic Development and Planning Departments worked together to bring this event to life with the Commission's approval of the event and a huge outpouring of support from the community. Morgan Kastner and Malachi Peterson worked diligently to make this event a great success, so I'd like to invite them both to present the outcomes to the Commission.
Thanks, Lauren. So, I'll just start here with a brief sort of timeline here of how events unfolded. So essentially back in November of last year, I was meeting with the Public Art Advisory Committee, which you folks helped establish mid last year. And really, that committee was sort of looking for a project to do, maybe an idea to help make come to life within the city. And around that time, Lauren was working with our engineering department as they were starting to get ready for the Sheyenne Street reconstruction project. And one of the ideas Lauren had was like, if we're going to tear up a street, why don't we do something fun with the street before we tear it up? And that's sort of where the idea of Color Fest was born. And it just so happened that around December of last year was when a grant landed literally in our laps. We received an email from the North Dakota Department of Commerce, and they have the Main Street Initiative, which the governor's office has been pushing pretty hard the last few years. And as part of this initiative, they have something called the Vibrancy Grant. So it's essentially looking for projects to fund that would make communities healthy, make them more vibrant. And so we decided to go ahead and apply for that grant. We wrote that grant over the course of December, applied for that grant in January, and at the end of January was when we received the $1,500 grant from the Department of Commerce. In February was when we then went to the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and also you folks as the City Commission, to get approval to use economic development sales tax monies to help both fund the event and also meet our one-to-one match for the North Dakota Department of Commerce monies. At that meeting, you folks approved $8,900 in funding, which we'll get to that kind of later on, and Morgan will cover the financials. But I'm really happy to say that we were that out of that $8,900, I think we only ended up using about $1,700 of the money that you gave to us, and the rest all came from the private sector, which was awesome to see. In March 2021, we sent out a call for artists. We received a bunch of different responses from artists across the state. The Public Art Advisory Committee ended up picking 3 artists. One artist was from Bismarck, one was from Fargo, and then the other one was from the Detroit Lakes area. So it was really cool to see the level of responses that we were able to get, not just from the local area, but statewide as well. In April was originally the month that we were supposed to have the event, but it just so happened that the week that we were going to have it, it snowed on like a Tuesday, which was really random and weird, but I shouldn't say that because it's North Dakota. And we were kind of concerned that, it might be a little bit cold for the event, the snow might melt and it might make the street a little bit wet, so we decided to postpone the event. It turned out that weekend was phenomenal. It was a great weekend, even though we didn't have the event. I think I went to the zoo that weekend. So in hindsight, probably should have just kept the event on that weekend, but we decided to move it to May instead. So in May was when Color Fest happened. We had 300 plus attendees. We had a boatload of vendors and sponsors, and just children and family and kids of all ages that came out to take part in it. And it was really awesome to see just the amount of community folks that were out there doing things on the street. And now here we're in June, and we are presenting the after-action report to you. I just submitted the reporting requirements to the state on Friday. I actually got a response back to them by them this morning. They were really pleased to see sort of what we were able to do with their money, and I believe they're going to be asking us to present at the Main Street Conference later this year on the event. These are just some pictures of our artists and what their original submissions were, and then the bottom pictures are what the submissions ended up being when they were actually painted that day. The first artist was Nicole Gansner from Bismarck. She had this really cool idea to do a hay bale. Personally, me and a few other people, we had some reservations. We were like, is she really going to be able to paint something that complicated with the help of kids and families and things like that? And she was, and we were able to get some really cool pictures of it from the Pioneer Place building. Lee Nelson from Detroit Lakes, she does a lot of things with their art community up in Detroit Lakes, and she's hoping to bring sort of this event idea back there and maybe do something similar to it within the next year or so. And then Leslie Ann, she works for Folkways here in Fargo, and she had this great little painting here where the paint actually came up on the sidewalk, and it was just really cool to see that done.
So next, looking at the numbers, so it's kind of hard to tell how many people attended a street event, but we can guess there was over 300 people attending. I saw people from little kids all the way up to elderly out there participating in the event and having fun. There was something for everyone to do there, whether it was painting, chalk, shopping at the vendors, or just kind of getting out into the community. Overall, we used 80 gallons of paint. We actually contributed to a paint shortage in our area here, so we had to go to like all the Walmarts, all the Menards, so we're sorry for that, for if anyone was trying to buy paint during that time. We had 3 artists, like Malachi said, from the surrounding area. We had 17 sponsors for the event, so leading up to the event, I personally walked around to businesses seeking out sponsorships, and I was very impressed by the amount of businesses who wanted to have this event and to be a part of it. One unique thing of being a business sponsor was that you got a parking spot to paint out there, and all of our sponsors came out and did that. And they did it in creative ways. Some just kind of did a painting on the ground, some advertised their business on there. And we also had 15 vendors. I think about 5 of them were food vendors and 10 were craft vendors. So here are some photos of the event. Originally, we were planning to have only about 2 parking spots be used for community painting, and all of a sudden, the next moment, I look over and almost half the street is painted by community art. And so we can see in our community that art, it just wants to flow everywhere. People want to see this vibrancy in our community. So yeah, people were painting, they were using the chalk we had set outside. We really saw the creativity of the community flow.
So as part of our grant application, we actually told the state that we were going to fly a drone over the event and take some pictures. According to the fire department, though, and a few other people, apparently there's like FAA regulations which restrict you from flying drones over people. So we actually the police department actually flew their drone over the street, I believe on Monday, and we got some really cool footage of that our marketing and communications department was able to put together and put a short video together and put on Facebook here, which we'll see whether or not it actually pulls up or not. If it doesn't, that's okay. I can send you this link later as well. Oops. It's not coming up on that screen. Okay, never mind then. Hold control. Oh. Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. I'll send you that link later. We were also featured in a KVRR story. I'm probably going to have the same issue pulling up that link as well, so I'll send you that link as well. But in that story, they interviewed a couple of children who took part in the event, and the children, it was really cool just hearing sort of their viewpoint on Colorfest from, like, I guess their view as just attendees. And one of them said something like, "Oh yeah, this is really cool. I hope they do this every year." And I was both elated when I heard that and also a little scared because of how much work went into this. And I was like, oh no, what have we done? But in total, we had a total of about 10 plus news articles that were written about the event, including radio stories and things of that nature. And usually the news articles, they didn't just relate to Colorfest, they also talked a little bit about the Sheyenne Street reconstruction as well. And before Morgan moves on to the financial part of the presentation, I also want to highlight that we had multiple partnerships with local entities as well who helped make this event possible. So, for instance, the Parks District brought yard games out to Colorfest so kids could play with those. They let staff here use one of their rooms at the Rusted Recreation Center to tie-dye shirts for volunteers, which was really fun because I haven't tie-dyed things since like middle school. They've also brought water. The school district got a bunch of their art classes involved from high school and middle school level, and we were actually able to feature some of the paintings and artwork from school students at local businesses, including Thunder Coffee. There was even one artist who made a little sculpture of her laying on a couch during the pandemic, watching TV and eating chips or something that was at Thunder Coffee. So it was really cool to sort of see that side of community involvement.
So going on to the financial aspect of it, so our funding shown on the left there, so I had seeked out sponsorships. We ended up with about $4,500 in business sponsorships, and also one person from the public had donated to this event. We received a $1,500 grant from the Department of Commerce. Our vendor fees was a little over $1,000 in total, and then there was the funding that was granted for coming out of economic development sales tax. Our expenses for the event were greatly lower than the max amount of money we had, and as Malachi mentioned before, only about $1,700 dipped out of the economic development sales tax fund. So we were very happy to see the amount of people who supported this event. And then finally, I just want to wrap up with thanking our sponsors who have helped for this event. Many of them on the spots that I want to sponsor this event, I want to be a part of it. There were some who we didn't even ask, and they had just emailed us and said, hey, I want to sponsor this, I want to be a part of it. So to everyone who helped us with this event and made it possible, we greatly say thank you. And we're open to any questions.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Malachi. Comments, questions for the two of them?
Did I hear you right, Malachi? Now the $7,100 goes back into the EDC, into the fund, so we're only out about $1,100 or something like that?
$1,700.
Pardon?
$1,700 is how much money.
So that's awesome, though. I mean, that's very good. Thank you.
Just one comment.
Please,
I sat in on their presentation during the EDAC meeting, and they said it was tough if you put down your paintbrush or roller, somebody picked it up and started painting again. So they were used all day long.
Wow.
And they had fun. The sponsors thought it was great.
Great community event. Thank you. Next order of business is item number 11. It's the Berg Auto Parking Lease Agreement. Mrs. Tina Fisk, City Administrator, City of West Fargo.
There we go.
Good evening, Commission President Dartis and Commissioners. Before you have the agreement, a lease agreement for the parking lot that's been established up on Sheyenne Street. This is the one that we had previously discussed and agreed that we would move forward to in order to provide some additional or some parking during the road diet project. So at this point, the agreement is before you to formalize how you would like to proceed. The costs are paid from economic development sales tax, and the total cost was $56,241. Did you have any questions for me, or do you have any changes that you would like to the agreement?
Commissioners, questions from Mrs. Fisk? Commissioner Jurdovic.
I guess I'll ask a question. I'm trying to remember exactly how you said it at the beginning. This hasn't been in front of the commission before. Is that a true statement?
It has been brought before the commission it's been brought through in passing during our discussions on the downtown project. We talked about making space for additional parking in this location, and that we would be working forward on how to make that happen.
If I could just make one more comment.
Please, Commissioner.
So, this item and actually the next item, I'm not going to debate the merits of the ideas, because I understand parking and the bathrooms certainly serve a purpose. My vote against both will be about the timing. It feels to me this should have been brought before us before now. So, just to kind of
Thank you, Commissioner Jarovic. I totally agree. If staff had the time that we should have to be able to devote to getting agreements prepared and out, this would have been brought before you along with the other one long ago. But with the amount of staff and the amount of time between all the other requests that we get and the questions that we have to answer, this is unfortunately a couple of the things that fall through the cracks. They're very important things, but they do. So, I have nothing more that I can say other than it happened. And we're working on ways, now that Tim is with us as Assistant City Administrator, we put some protocols and rules in place, and some cross-checks so that this won't happen again.
Can you, I'm sorry, Commissioner George, please.
Just a quick question. So if this were to get voted down, what happens?
Currently, they've been paid because it was an agreement that we had talked with them about. And so at that point, you would probably have to go back and we would have to request the money, at which point, I would imagine you would start a lawsuit. But I'm not sure. I have no idea. I have not talked with them about that because they understood that this is what we wanted, and our staff worked directly with them to make sure that it happened so that there could be parking for the public downtown.
When you say lawsuit, I mean, under what grounds?
But what I mean is, and I shouldn't have said that word, but what I mean is that we worked directly with the company and asked them to build this parking lot for us, and they worked directly with their staff on what they would do in the pricing, so we gave them the impression that we were in favor of this, and I was doing it on a directive from discussions with all of you. And so, I'm not sure what would happen, but, for sure we wouldn't be able to use it anymore for parking, but I'm not sure beyond that.
That seems like a problem if, we have the option to vote how we want to vote, but if we vote no, that we might have a lawsuit. That doesn't seem right to me at all.
I misspoke. I should not have said that. I don't know what would happen.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So, obviously, this is a dilemma we're all in. Obviously, I think all of us made some mistakes. I'll tell you right now, I knew these restrooms were coming.
We're talking about the parking.
I'm sorry, the parking. I apologize. The restroom's the next one, but, so, I think we all knew, or at least I knew, we had discussions about the parking lot. We talked about it, that we need extra parking downtown. Here's the problem we're running into. Number one, I still think we need parking downtown. We still have two phases that we're going through, so we still need parking downtown. Yes, there's open parking across at the Bell, but it's not our parking, it's a private parking. So if we were to vote this down, in my mind, what could happen is exactly this. We've already paid the bill. Okay, unfortunately, we've already paid the bill. So we have to go after them. They don't come after us. So we would have to, if we had decided that we want this $56,000, obviously, if they decide not to pay us, we would have to sue them. That's just reality. Now we have to ask ourselves the question, how much is it going to cost us to sue for $56,000? Is it worth that? I realize it's after the fact. I realize that, you know, it's all done, but the point now, I think we have to ask ourselves, is it worth turning it down and trying to go after him and get that money? How much are we gonna spend and how much trouble and time? And John could probably answer that question better than anybody, if that was the case.
Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. Without getting into analysis of the litigation, unfortunately, the other party would argue that cities made, had what they call apparent authority. So when you're negotiating with somebody and they act as if, they have authority, we'd have an uphill battle to win in court. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but given that principle law that when you're negotiating with another party and you think they have apparent authority, you're entitled to some reliance on that other party. And so it would be an uphill battle. I think you would, even if we had a decent case, you'd still end up probably spending at least half to three-quarters of the $56,000 to get $50,000 back. So.
Commissioner Jurdovic. Thank you, Mr. Shockley.
I think we need to look at these as two separate things. I mean, to your point, the money has been spent. This is for a lease agreement. We don't necessarily need to sign the lease agreement. The parking lot has already been spent. I disagree with the parking lot. To your previous comment, Tina, we had I knew there was generic conversations about parking. For example, the 5 houses, there was a discussion on the parking lot there. The first I have heard about the Berg Auto Lot being a parking lot was a few days before the previous commission meeting, when I saw the packet. That's the first time I had ever heard of it. Because I actually drove over there because I was shocked there was a parking lot. So that's why when I say I just don't want it to be mischaracterized, the discussions that were had, because it was net new information to me at that point in time. But I will also point out, it's $56,000, which is within sort of the operating constraints that we provide our city administrators. So there's nothing to be said about having to go after the $56,000. The parking lot is there. I disagree with how the whole thing came out, but I don't actually believe we have an issue if we vote this down.
Well, why would we vote it down if we gotta pay for it anyway? Then we might as well use it to our advantage.
I will vote against anything that comes to me after the fact, because it literally takes away my only job as a commissioner is to have a vote, and if something is already done, you're taking away my right to vote. So even if I support something, if you ask for my approval after it's done, I will vote against it out of principle.
Thank you, Commissioner Jurdovic. Anyone else? I'm going to focus on something Mr. Shockley said, apparent authority. My understanding is that the authority, the policy, sits up here, the 5 of us. Okay? But at the same time, we gave staff some parameters of what they could purview and spend dollars on. So Commissioner Jurdovic is absolutely right. This is within a city administrator's purview to spend this amount of money. Okay? She can make that decision, and without coming to the city commission. And, that's, whether that's right or wrong or whatever, that's another discussion. That's not what we're here for. Mrs. Fisk didn't do anything wrong here.
Agreed.
What's wrong is the process. The process was flawed from the beginning. It states right in our city administrative rules that she can review anything up to $100,000. Okay? Now, the questions come in, it's much more complicated. When we were talking about the 5 houses, that was going to be crushed concrete in a parking lot. Okay? Then the Berg Auto thing takes place, and all of a sudden it's paved. And so, as Mr. Jurdovic has said, we were all involved in some general conversations about this. There's no doubt. But what's wrong with the process was, when did it go to paving? I can't put my finger on that. So the process is, they have the ability to negotiate. Staff does. These people have high levels of responsibility to our community. But the apparent authority is up here, is because we have basically a lot of staff sitting on this side and a lot of the public sitting on this side. With all due respect to the staff, our first responsibility is to this side of the building. It is to the public, and it's tax dollars. And one thing that I've heard for 3 years is continuing, is that we need to be cautious on the amenities that we are providing our community. The amenities, rather than the necessities. Because people are so concerned about their special assessments and their property taxes and that type of thing. So the process was flawed in the sense of how it was executed, the fact that the lease agreement is coming after the fact. That must be fixed. We must have an understanding about that. This won't be tolerated again. Okay? I think that goes without question. Commissioners, that all of us up here, that these processes, and I realize you're busy. I realize everything's moving fast here. We've got developers that expect us to turn around footing foundation things in 3 days, for crying out loud. That would take 14 days in any other city. So make no mistake, the process was flawed. The public discord that we have with regard to this particular issue, the public is right. It wasn't transparent. It wasn't discussed in public. But at the same time, we have some rules and protections that the dollar amount that could be expended without city approval. And we'll look into that further. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, and I do agree with you, Mayor, that you know, we have to give our staff and basically our CEO some room to maneuver here in this process, especially in this political process, because that's what this has become, is all political. For $56,000, we have people going just schizo around the city right now, which is just crazy in the scheme of things, and what each and every one of us commissioners and each and every one of our staff are trying to do. I said it on the radio today. We're trying to do the very best we can for all of you and the other 41,000 citizens that come through our city, that move like Hebron brick to our community because they hear good things, and they're bringing 45 jobs and 45 people here. We can't be stuck on these little small issues that hold us up. And that's the problem right now. We have that stigma between the commission, between the staff, and being the community. And so, yes, we have to be much more transparent. And I'm telling you, we will be. Tina knows, Tina will be. We all will be more transparent. We're all agreeing on that. But before you jump the gun and hear some social media this and social media that, get the facts. Make sure you just listen to, because we're all human. We're all part-timers trying to do the very best. I've been here 17 years. And sometimes I go at home at night and I cry because people get angry and they call me names and they call Tina names and they call the mayor, for God's sake, names. The guy that's tried to do everything as well. Folks, we're just human like you. Nobody's trying to be a crook. We're just trying to do the best we can with what we've got. So if that was too much, I apologize, but that came from my heart, and I mean it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Mrs. Fisk? Okay. I stated earlier that any item that's on the regular agenda can be addressed by the public. I don't know how many might want to speak to this item. I'd like to see a show of hands at this time, because we're gonna be a little protective of time. We're not gonna be too restrictive. Could anybody from the public that wants to speak on the Berg Auto Parking Lease Agreement here this evening? Raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2. Anyone else? 3? Mr. Silver? Okay. Epic is here. Okay, 4? Okay. The comments are only to be on the parking lot lease agreement, on the process or whatever, but it's on the parking lot lease agreement. We'll start with about 3 minutes each. Emily, will you help me with the clock? We'll begin with, sir, go ahead. Mr. Brad Schmidt.
Brad Schmidt, West Fargo. one thing you folks are tossing around is $56,000. Please remember that on top of that, Ms. Fisk has conveniently left out all the costs the city incurred to haul all the debris away. And if you do approve the lease agreement, there is a cost in there to tear all of that asphalt out. And as I understand, the agreement ends November or within 60 days after the project is done. So I think you need to read your lease agreement that it's not just $56,000. I have asked what the costs are that we incurred to haul all the debris away. And I'm also curious if now that another developer comes forward and asks you to demolish, or if they demolish a building and ask you to haul all their debris away, are you going to do that too? I mean, are we now into that kind of a business? So I applaud you, Mayor, for calling out the, what I'm going to call the atrocity again of city staff on this deal. We get tired of seeing that kind of stuff, but there's more than $56,000 here, people.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Mrs. Fisk,
President
with
Dartis.
regard to the term of the lease agreement, would you please address that?
I have two things that I'd like to address. One is the cost of the debris. We did not haul it away. We accepted it at the transfer station, and anything that was put in a roll-off and hauled away, they were billed for. So, clearly, we did not pay to haul it away.
One clarification. I too saw a West Fargo dump truck there or something. So they were billed. Mr. Anvik, would you step to the microphone? Let's just, Mr. Schmidt, that's a good point, and let's get the clarification right now, please.
Commissioner Dartis, Commissioners, yes, the original agreement is we would accept the waste out at the inert landfill, and they were going to haul, but at the time, the road restrictions were on, and they didn't want to use their trucks because they were too heavy.
Too big a trucks.
So we said, we can put roll-offs out there, but we're going to charge you $160 per load, which we did. So, yes, we did haul them, but they were charged the regular rate as everybody else. I think it was 12 to 15 loads at $160.
So to make it clear to the public, what West Fargo's expense then was what we normally charge per ton for a tipping fee. Is that correct?
Hauling fee.
Hauling fee.
Yep, when we hauled.
That's right, we hauled it, okay. Normally
yep.
a tipping fee is just, they bring it to us, okay.
Yeah,
very good, very good.
Tipping fee, and it was only probably not even, I want to say about $1,500 would have been for getting rid of it, I think.
So they were billed for all the roll-offs?
That we hauled,
yes,
correct.
Sir. On a per load basis, like everybody pays commercially?
Correct.
Thank you, sir. Tina, do you have one more point?
The other item that you wanted me to discuss, President Dartis, was the term of this agreement. The term of this agreement has fluctuated from the different discussions I had with each one of you, asking what kind of term you wanted. Did you want it to end when the construction of the road was done? Did you want it extended until you felt it was a more appropriate time, or till when the investors in that particular property wanted to build? And I got varying answers. But it seemed like the consensus was, make it at the end of construction. And so that's what's on there, but that can be changed if you decide you want to do this, and if you want to make changes. Those changes are yours to make.
Thank you for that clarification. And I was one that suggested that the lease agreement, if in fact we execute the lease, should be 2 years down the line. We've made an investment in, the city has, with this asphalt, and through the generosity of Epic allowing us to use that space, they own the property. My thought is that we're gonna need some time to understand how the new street project on Sheyenne works for us. The idea is to bring it, is to bring the public downtown, and so if they continue to come downtown, there might be more demand for parking and all that type of thing. So it was my suggestion that because we made that investment, let's try and get them to commit to a 2-year agreement, and then that way, when their plans for possibly construction,
gives us more bang for our buck.
More time for a dollar. Mrs. Fish, you have something else?
I just want to make one more final clarification. It was brought up about the 5 houses on Sheyenne. This was already, putting this asphalt parking lot was already in play and in place before we ever talked about the 5 houses. And the 5 houses, the reason for the gravel, if we even did it, if the houses would have went through, was just if we needed staging, if we needed additional, it wasn't intentionally for that, because the intent of it was to reinvest and get that back on the tax base in the community. So this was really the original plan for that lot, to have it asphalted and striped, so that people down there could have parking, because we have a parking shortage the way it is. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marquardt, you had your hand up second.
Thank you, Commissioners. What Brad had to say is kind of the same thing I had to say, but, it's like we're putting the cart in front of the horse here. And the other part about that is that lot for Berg Auto had a concrete lot there, the building was there. And so we could probably, if we're gonna put a lot in there, could have probably saved some money by not tearing out the whole thing and used the concrete that was there. On the other side of that is, I understand that we don't own, or the city doesn't own, the Bell Bank building, but there's not a no parking sign in it, so that could be used for parking, if we wanted to use it. I don't think they would.
It's private property, so you can't just use it.
Well, but if I park there, I don't think I'm getting ticketed.
Well, you could be told it's their property, it's private.
But there's not a sign up there that says it. It might be, you're right. You can say what you want, it might be. Bottom line is, we put the cart in front of the horse, and I don't think we should be approving things, I guess it's gonna be up to you guys, but we're approving things that are gonna pay for them after the fact. And I think that's a major issue, and that's where, once again, the transparency comes into play, and the fiduciary responsibility to the citizens. I appreciate what you said, Mayor Dardis, that you're here for us. And these people probably live in West Fargo too, I don't know that. I don't know if they do or not.
Many of them do.
But that's the other part of it, and then, of course, the things that happen, but appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Marquardt. Gentleman, yes, sir. I recognize you, but I can't say your name to save my soul.
Mike Kanowski with Epic Companies.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just here to answer any questions you guys have, and one of the things that was coming up was the duration of the lease. We're flexible with that. If you guys want to leave it and we tear it out, that's fine. If you guys want to tear it out right when the construction is done, that's fine. We're amenable to any of those discussions you guys want to have.
Did Berg Auto have a basement? Was there a basement?
No, it had just a deeper foundation.
Mr. Marquardt make it a good point. There was a concrete parking pad, but obviously the footings are substantial and all of that. So when you take the footings out, all of a sudden your parking area, it was relatively small.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Dustin could probably speak to this a lot better than I. The right-of-way that is the new right-of-way now that is in there, a lot of that parking lot was in the new right-of-way, so it needed to be taken out, a lot of it anyway, and then at that point, we might as well take the whole thing out at that point.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Questions for him?
If I remember right, that parking lot was pretty high up above the current level of the street, so it would have been very hard to deal with. So it would have had to come out no matter what.
To his point, there was a concrete buffer protecting from people going out into the street, and obviously that had a deep footing and the like. Any additional questions for the gentleman? Thank you.
I think
Senator Judy Lee is next. Senator, good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President and members of the Commission. I'm not going to get into the details of what the lease ought to be. That's getting into the weeds beyond where I am. But what I am concerned about here, as well as in some other incidents that have raised my interest, not always in a positive way in the last several months, is that I spent a lot of time in meetings and hearings and public votes and all that stuff, including 12 years in the Planning and Zoning Commission here before I ever went to the Senate. The process never has been that a staff person or a clerk or an intern or an administrator, I don't care where it is, would poll the members of the Planning Commission or a Senate Human Services Committee or a legislative body to see how everybody felt and then come and say that that's what you get. It's one thing if I take my little clipboard around, so to speak, or my iPad, and I ask each of you what you think about a particular issue, and then I come back and report that. It's an entirely different thing if all 5 of you are together as you are tonight, and you have a discussion about whatever that issue is, because each of us learns from the other person. I mean, I have spent way more hours even this year than you probably have, sitting in hearings and listening to testimony and figuring out what we have to do. And in every single case, you learn something from that dialogue. There's a synergy to having that discussion together. So I really encourage you, if this has become a habit in the way that you are reaching consensus on the committee, I respectfully request that you instead have the subjects brought to you. You can figure out what else you'd like to know beyond what you already have in your own minds. You can designate the staff people you'd like to have to do some homework for you and bring it back to the body again. But please don't just poll. It's not the way that a democracy is supposed to work. So I'm not your boss. I don't get to do that. I'm one voter, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. But please look at this as something that is, we count on you to be discussing this yourselves. I trust you all to make good decisions based on the information available to you. And I'd like to think that you might trust me to make good decisions when I'm doing that same thing. But every vote that we have in the body I'm in right now is done with everybody in the room. All the discussions are held in that way. And I encourage you to see the advantage of that and see if that might work too, because some of these things result, as a result, we have a breakdown in communication perhaps with constituency that doesn't know everything. I don't know everything that is going on with your elective life, and you don't with mine either, but I can ask you and you can tell me. So it's just an observation and a commentary. I appreciate all of you. I know what a big job this is, and I'm grateful that you're willing to take it on. West Fargo is in great shape and is doing good things, and I thank you for making that happen. So aside from the fact I'm not crazy about cruising Sheyenne being on the other side of the interstate this year, because my Buick ain't running across Sheyenne Street in 94, keep on doing good work, but please do it together.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, Mr. Solberg is next. Emily, do we have anybody else that's contacted you? Okay, thank you, Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you so much. I don't want to step on Tina's toes or anybody else's, but with all due respect to the public, I do want to point out specifically that this project was part of our downtown Sheyenne Street project. So there's planning, engineering, public works, all doing work on this economic development department. The paving, if you look at the bill, was the paving on the bill is $20,000. So what Tina and Economic Development at the time, prior to Lauren being here, worked with the commission at that time was, we're going to pave this lot. So that's $20,000 relative to a multi-million-dollar engineering project. Where it got a little bit more expensive was in the demolition of the concrete. The concrete, as you recall at Bergato, went up to the building, so it's 3 feet higher than the road that we're going to build there. So we have to demo that. So we made a decision and asked for Tina's permission. We're going to demo that part of the concrete. So those are little decisions that get to that point of 60 or 50,000. The other part then is the earthwork after you rip out this concrete to grade that. We wanted to make sure that it didn't grade into the homeowner to the west. So what we're doing there is making sure that we're not negatively affecting our neighbors. So as you see, we're talking about a $20,000 project that went to almost $60,000. So I can understand from the public's perspective that that's a lot of money. But when we started it, it was a $20,000, let's do quick asphalt paving on this lot to make a parking area relative to the parking disruption that we're going to cause downtown. I just wanted to clearly make that statement. No ill intent to the public. I understand they're being concerned about the amount of money, but that's sometimes how things happen in big projects. So I'm maybe not speaking on behalf of Dustin or Lauren or Tina, but I just wanted to provide that clarity.
Well, I appreciate that clarification, Mr. Solberg. I have a question for you. So the original discussions that were taking place on demo, Epic would tear down the building and get rid of that.
Yep.
So that part of that conversation, or that under that umbrella, did not include the parking lot or the other concrete raised area that they had on the east side.
No, because they wouldn't have known the grading. I mean, we engineered a road project here. They wouldn't have understood the grading that occurred. That was something, they were just going to leave that parking lot and we would kind of Band-Aid it and do more parking next to it, asphalt paving. Not a major deal. But when you look at it after you do the grading of a large project, just like most of these engineering projects, you have a good scope, but you never know the detail until you get into the engineering, and that's where we find that out. And that's where directions were made by a lot of us underneath Tina, and we bring that big picture to Tina, and, you know, she was forced to make a decision that, in our minds, was simple, so.
Thank you for that clarification and additional information, Mr. Sober. Anything else? Commissioner Simmons?
I do. I just want to make one comment because I know earlier we talked about lawsuits and stuff, and I want to make clear, especially to the newspaper, that Epic has never mentioned a lawsuit. We've never discussed that. They never, I'm certain, will sue us, or we will sue them. We came to them for this, to look for that parking lot. They didn't pursue us. This was us as a staff and as what I thought also that it was us. So I want to make sure they don't come out looking bad. They're very responsible developers. They've done a great job downtown and out south, and they don't need to take a bad rap again on something that we did. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay. So understand, just for clarification, our vote this evening is as to whether or not to accept the lease agreement.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we're going to go back after any money that's not part of this. Just so everybody in the public and staff all understand, all we're dealing with is this lease agreement. So if there's terms in this agreement that I might disagree with any of the other commissioners, or they with me, that's not the point. The point here is just the lease agreement as it's written. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak to this? Sir, come on. Oh, Mr. Graham again. Please come on up.
You know, I just wanted to clarify, as part of the investment group, we did meet, and we truly, in good faith, thought that we were doing the right thing by spending our money to help out the city. So whether right or wrong, I don't disagree that the process is maybe cart before horse, but we did, within good intent, think we were doing the right thing.
I believe that. The process is on us. Anyone else? What's your pleasure, commissioners?
I would make a motion.
Oh, Tina, do you have
Nope,
anything additional?
I'm just back up here for the next one.
She's a presenter, so.
I would make a motion that we approve the lease agreement.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve the lease agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the lease agreement as presented today, Monday, June 7th. Is there any further discussion? I have one question. On the term, Epic has indicated that they're totally and completely flexible. Can that be a part of the motion, that ongoing negotiation?
Absolutely.
I think. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the lease agreement with conditions to negotiate the term.
I want to make it clear, so there's no misunderstanding in the future. My motion is to agree to this agreement and to negotiate, but I'm going to allow our city administrator to do those negotiations. She doesn't have to come back and ask us. I mean, I think she's a CEO. Let's give her a little respect as well. As the public's asking these questions, I understand, but I just think we need to, we're starting to tear our staff down, I think, and I think we gotta get through this and then move on, make our changes and move on in this entire deal. So I just want to make it clear, I think Tina should have that authority. That's okay with Commissioner Olson.
All right, a motion and a second approves that amendment. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the Berg Auto Parking Lease Agreement signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries on a 3-2 vote.
Can we take a 5 minute
Can we
break?
please,
Commissioner George has requested a recess. We stand to recess for 5 minutes.
open his microphone.
Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Melissa. I work with Maddie. Do you have any follow-up questions?
Cheap one. I think she took the whole thing. She had like her microphone. Okay, go.
you're out there, will you check the commissioner's center?
He's right there with us. Welcome to the city hall.
June 7th, West Fargo City Commission meeting will be back in order. The next order of business is item number 12, a purchase agreement, restroom locker room for the VFW MIA Plaza, Tina Fisk, City Administrator, City of West Fargo.
Thank you, Commission President and Commissioners. Again, this agreement is one that has been a long time coming. I briefed each of you on what I could give you for the history on it. And, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. And so with that in mind, the original purpose of it was when we built the VFW Plaza, there was a private building next door that wasn't part of the equation. We knew we needed public restrooms, but we weren't exactly sure where those restrooms would go. And then once there was going to be development in the lot right next door, there were discussions with the commission at the time and with the developers that we would want to put public restrooms and a warming / locker room in that space in order to serve the public that comes and uses that space. Right now, we use porta potties, but those aren't available in the winter and they also aren't very sanitary. And so therefore, this seemed like this was what we were going towards. So with that in mind, before you have the agreement and you have the purchase price of the space, and there's only two options here. Either you want to approve the purchase and provide that to the public, or you don't want to approve the purchase and then we just won't, it'll be closed off and the city won't have public restrooms or warming space for that place, for that VFW Plaza. And that staff doesn't have a directive on this. We don't, we always knew that we wanted to provide that to the public, but that's totally a commission decision, so.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisk. Does the North Dakota State Health Department have any requirements or North Dakota Century Code with regard to a public space on providing restrooms if there's a larger capacity or anything like that?
The little bit of information that I've gotten so far is in speaking with our building inspector, Mark Hausch. When you have a dedicated public space, you are supposed to provide bathrooms that are adequate to serve that space when the space is being used. So right now, on a regular basis, we just have porta potties sitting out there. That's not a good long-term fix. We're going to have to do something.
So, but there's no porta potties downtown now in that space. I mean, I understand at special events we do have it.
No, I believe there's one that sits out there. I was told there's one that sits out there. Maybe not this year, but usually it's out there all the time because we've gotten complaints from the neighbors that they don't like it there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Fisk. Questions for Mrs. Fisk?
One comment, Commissioner President. One comment I might want to make is that purchase price, just so that you're all aware and it can be clarified because there's been a lot of misinformation being spread around out there. That purchase price includes, we own that space, but from this, if you purchase it, we have no cleaning, no maintenance, no repairs, no specials, no taxes, no CAMs, nothing. If somebody breaks something, it gets fixed by whoever owns the building. All repairs and maintenance for perpetuity are covered. I provided you a sheet that shows you the present value of those services, and we did it at a low end level, and it comes to around $400,000, and that's kind of a low end because we just kind of put it together. But totally, again, we just need a direction so that we can let them know so they know what to do.
So, The purchase price includes all CAMs,
Mhm.
so there's nothing there. It includes all custodial.
Yes.
It includes all supplies.
Yes.
Toilet paper, whatever. Are we billed for heat or electricity of that condo?
No, we are not that, nor water, sewer, garbage.
Nor water, sewer, or garbage. Okay?
Mayor?
It's 100% operation and maintenance is paid with the purchase price.
Correct. I had someone ask me today, if somebody goes in there and wrecks something, breaks a mirror, breaks a toilet, what happens? And I said, the owner of the building replaces it. That's how that agreement is written up.
Okay.
And that was the way that the developer wanted it to be.
Commissioner Simmons.
The other issue that we have to remember is right now, when we do have events down there, West Fargo events, it costs us about $10,000 to put porta potties down there for the events. That's not including West Fest and Cruise Night. That's just the movie night ones, the parties, the private parties, which we've already probably would have them if we have porta potties. Who's going to bring their kid or daughter? I'll tell you that to that. So that includes that as well. And it's interesting because I said it today. I was down there and just ironically, the little red bus came and the little kids were getting books and they were using those bathrooms. Now that's what they're for. That's the scheme of what we were trying to do. That's what it's about. It's not about the horse before the wagon or what have you. It's about providing for our children, providing for the community, giving them something. Those restrooms are very important, and I don't know who, I knew they were coming. I didn't know when, I didn't know how much, but we all, or at least I knew they were coming at some point. We were going to have bathrooms. This is for our future kids. This is for our community. I think we have to remember that when we're looking at this stuff and the costs and what goes into it. I just want to make sure everybody remembers that.
Commissioner Jurdovic.
So just to clarify, this went forward, and I think Commissioner Simmons actually just kind of verified this, because there was a general belief the commission was for it, if you go back 3-4 years roughly.
Mm-hmm.
But there was never a previous vote on this topic, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. As I already previously said, I just out of principle, I will vote against things that are after the fact. I otherwise probably would support this. I do see the need for it, so I'm actually going to vote against something that in some form or fashion I would otherwise support. My one question, assuming this passes, is what about security? What about this being used, in the middle of winter at 5 o'clock in the dark, people going in there? What kind of what concern is there as it relates to how this might be used from that perspective, and to make sure it's secure?
Once we would own the property, we would make determinations on what kind of security cameras we could put up and where they would be located. It's automatically locks and unlocks at certain times of the day, and so that kind of takes care of that part. But if we were to own it, then we would set up a plan on how to monitor it and have someone look and make sure everything's okay. That type of thing. Right now, West Fargo events, I believe, just because they're there, kind of looks through there all the time and checks on it, but they don't do the cleaning or anything. That's done by the building owner.
Commissioner George.
So just a comment, is this going to be beautiful and great? Yeah. My personal problem is, though, when I first heard about this, I heard the price and I reeled just without hearing a single public comment. I had a problem with the price. And, is it awesome? Yeah. But is it way more than we need? Yeah, I think it is. So that's where my problem is. I think it's more than we need and more expensive than we should be paying, and that's why I'm having problems supporting it.
Commissioner Olson.
Well, I too had a knee-jerk reaction on the first price. But after having discussions with our finance director and others at city staff, it sounds expensive, but for some of the facilities that have been built in the FM metro area, this is relatively cheap. There was something over at Health Club in Fargo that the Parks owns. Escapes my mind right now, the name, but 20 years ago, it cost over $900,000, and it was not much larger than this because of the facility was restrooms and all that kind of stuff, and the requirements and all that. So after a lot of consideration, and knowing that it's a one-time purchase price, when you could buy a house for $300,000, but you still have to maybe shingle it. You have to buy supplies. You have to do this for as long as you own it. We won't have to do that. That's the long-term thing here. Thank you.
Commissioner Simmons.
I agree, Commissioner Olson. You know, you look at the price tag, but then you look at all the maintenance free, all the paper products free. Everything is free from here on until the end. That's part of the contract. So when you look at $319,000, take that over 30 years, or, we have 50 years on the other building. That doesn't come up to a whole lot of money, in my opinion, to have facilities again for our community and for our kids when they're down there, for when they're skating, to go in and change their skates. I don't know if you've been down there. I went down and actually took pictures on my phone, but it's a commercial restroom. It's built to be used by the citizens. It's not a wood, used with wood. It's commercial. It's exactly, honestly, what we need down there. So I think it's a good deal.
And there's male, three and three. There's 3 stalls in each area, along with the warming area or shoe changing area, whatever you want to call it. I visited the site today. Commissioner Olson?
And since you mentioned the shoe changing thing, the bleachers is this kind of a poor term. They're
aluminum steel benches is
right.
What they are, and there's 3 of them.
And to go out and just buy any kind of piece of furniture out there for $200 a piece, you're getting a steal.
I thought that was cheap. I really did.
All right. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to this item? Mr. Marquardt, please. Again, state your address for the record.
Steve Marquardt, 725 15th Avenue East. Thanks, letting me up here again. I question some of the stuff here because my understanding it's about a 700 square foot area, which would make it about 24 by 30, would make 720 square feet, if my math's right. Okay? So basically what you're going to have, if you put bathrooms and if you split it into thirds, you're going to have 10 feet women, 10 feet men, and 10 feet in the middle for a changing area, and 30 feet deep, or 24 feet deep, if it goes that way. So when you look at the square footage that's there, that's kind of a concern for me, of what they're paying for it. Now, is there a bid to go with it? I don't know. Are we putting in gold-plated faucets or something? I have no idea. That's where my concern is with this. My other concern with this is when this plaza first went down, and that was, I think, before you were on here, Mayor Dardis, and before you guys were on here, I questioned that as well, because that was ended up being if I'm not mistaken, $850,000 project. And the developer kicked in $50,000. The West Fargo Park Board wanted nothing to do with it, and so I think the VFW kicked in $350,000, and West Fargo put in $450,000 before.
No, you're inaccurate.
Okay, Mr. Simmons, let's address the numbers as Mr. Marquardt has recited them. Mrs. Fisk or Mr. Simmons, do you know the?
I do know, but I think Tina knows.
Mrs. Fisk?
Ms. Fisk.
There was a separate agreement negotiated by our Economic Development Director for the naming rights of the plaza, and the VFW organization agreed to $300,000 to be paid over the course of 10 years. Of that agreement, they're behind. But we've received $30,000, that's all.
But that was just for the signage.
Okay, so West Fargo, the city of West Fargo had some money, though, that was put into that project. Because it wasn't, well, obviously, if they only paid $30,000 and the developer paid $50,000, there's $80,000. But that was close to an $800,000 bill, if I'm not mistaken.
It was part of the TIF program. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to do that. It isn't a TIF, it's part of the P3, and we get all of our money back through the P3 lease payments.
Over what term? That'd be a logical question that somebody's going to ask.
I was going to say, how long is this going to last? Yes, exactly.
20?
Mr. Commission President, Mr. Commission President, that was not a TIF, as Tina had indicated. Those parcels are taxable, so you're, not only are you getting the lease payments, you're getting the taxes back. That was the advantage of the P3. In addition, the developer built that, facility, and the city did put some initial funds in to get it started, but Tina's correct, in addition to the tax payments, we structured it so that you're getting lease, payments back. I'd have to go back and look at the specific agreement, but we have a stepped up lease amount every year. I want to say it steps up to the maximum amount in year 5, and then you get lease payments through the 50-year term of the P3, and then at the end of the P3, all of the buildings, all of the facilities are turned over to the city for $1. So not only are you getting your money back, you're also getting the investment for the public infrastructure in place. And the one advantage of P3 over others is we like to talk about transparency. You also get to see the operations and maintenance costs up front. And so that was the nice thing about that development. But
Thank you, Mr. Shocker. Please continue, Mr. Marquardt, for...
Okay. Well, then I stand corrected on that, but I thought the money was there. But of course, if we haven't got the $270,000 back from the VFW, we're still in the hole as this situation is going, okay? Back to the bathroom issue. Commissioner Simmons, you said it costs $10,000 per unit for porta potties?
No, it costs us $10,000 total for the year.
For the year,
For the
okay.
porta potties,
For the year.
$10,000.
Okay, I kind of, once again, I drive by there, see some stuff there. I don't know who's flipping the light bill and all the other stuff that's going on there, but on, like, Sunday, I drove by there and there wasn't a person. It was warm outside, you're right, but there wasn't a person there using it. There was no one to be seen. You know, so bottom line is, it's, you know, there's gonna be days and where it's gonna happen, I understand that. But if we're doing this, if we're worried about cruise night, which takes place 4 times a year, you know, is that something that, if I'm downtown for cruise night and I need to, if I'm drinking beer and I'm at the VFW, I think of a client there, I can use their bathroom, or if I'm next door at one of those places. So that's where my concern is there. Is it something that we go down and say, hey guys, maybe you guys need to help us out here, rather than the city taxpayers throwing this money there? And that's the concern of mine. You know, is it feasible for all of us, and all of them too? I'm not saying, I don't know if they live there or not. But the thing about it is, did I turn that off? I just bumped this thing right here, I don't know what happened.
Okay.
So anyway, or it probably just went dead. But bottom line is it feasible for everything that's there?
Thank you, Mr. Marquardt. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this issue?
I'll just make a comment.
Please.
Brian again from Epic Companies. I just wanted to, respond to Eric's question about security, I guess, on that.
Little closer to the microphone, please.
We'll work with,
Thank you.
We'll work with, West Fargo Events or whoever's running that to basically time the locks on the security so that, you know, because we have people there, running the apartments and things like that, so we'll have that all timed out. When they have an event, it can stay open later. If it doesn't, they can. We can shut it down earlier, that type of thing. I worry sometimes about when we get up here and we start talking about things and start throwing numbers around and somebody said this person said that. You know, I don't want Epic to sit here and just get slammed that we're doing something wrong. We're doing this for the good of the community. And when I hear somebody come up and say that, oh, they only gave $50,000 to that POW MIA park, that's incorrect. We gave $300,000 to that park. So I just didn't want to sit back and just keep getting hit like that. If there's any other questions, and I do know that to Mandy's point, you get a knee-jerk reaction of saying, man, that's a lot of money, but when you start looking at just plain old concrete and stainless steel bins or toilets and things like that around at parks, and those things can run $600,000-$700,000 for those things, and that's one of the reasons why this stuff adds up like that. So
And Brian, can I ask real quick, since you're standing, what did the floor, the rubber, that bathroom takes unique features because it's gonna have skates on it. That was kind of part of the intention here.
Yep,
Hockey,
everything.
A warming house, benches.
Correct.
What does that, just the rubber floor that you guys put in? I mean, that's all stuff you would not do in a normal bathroom. So
Correct.
it's gonna be higher
Not.
price, is kind of what I'm saying.
I don't know the price of that per square foot, but it's quite a bit more than just
Right.
normal tile or something like that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? Mandy?
I'd just like to make a comment. So, a couple of years ago in Fargo, on Broadway, they had that little tiny ice rink that I went to skate at. And they had a small little wood shack where you could put your skates in, and an outhouse that you could use in the winter, and I'm sure it cost considerably less. Was it as nice? No, absolutely not, but the wants versus needs, that's where I'm at.
Well, we have movie night down there too, we have different things with kids, little kids that are watching a movie.
I know. I mean, I think it's awesome, I do, but I just can't justify spending it.
Conference, yeah.
So.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner George. Any additional questions for the gentleman? Okay. Thank you, sir. There's one more person just raised their hand. Please step forward. Thank you. Please introduce yourself and your address.
My name's Tom Stoops, and I live at 1397 Goldwood. It's a recurring thing I keep thinking about in development. Owing money, they said are behind on payments. Invested $300,000, that kind of thing. Maybe the developers need to take the lead on developing. Taxpayers get on the hook for stuff, back payments. Warming house, I think exactly like that. A wind block with a bench. Bathrooms are needed. Price seems high, but maintenance. Now the other question is who's changing out the trash during the events? They say the building owner is going to do it. Are they going to have somebody there to maintain that? Cleanliness. We know the bathrooms turn into a mess during events. Outhouses are nasty. But biggest thing is between the last two subjects, it seems like developers should be taking the lead and the city should just stick to the basics. Too much management. Things get lost. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Questions for the gentleman? Anyone? Commissioners? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? I want to make sure that the last gentleman that spoke understands. The developer is not behind in any payments. Okay. It's another entity. Okay. Very, very good. I wasn't quite sure the way that you articulated it is that we were on the same page. So, Mrs. Fisk.
I was just coming up so that I could answer any more questions and allow you to make your decision.
So, in this process, there's Commissioner Jurdevig makes an excellent point. When you're elected to the responsibility that we are, and there's dollars involved, and those dollars are tax dollars, and part of our public perceives this as an amenity rather than a necessity, if you will, and that's very objective to each and every one of us that are in this room. So were there any discussions at any point in time as to what the end price tag might be? I mean, was there ongoing discussions, Mrs. Fisk? I don't know of any, but I'm asking you, was there communication between Epic companies or the developers and or staff?
There was, when we did the TIF agreement for that building, it was listed in there that, on the side, that these bathrooms would be $319,000 and not covered by the TIF. That was back in 2020. That was part of the,
Okay.
Yep, that was part of the packet for the firm building that was brought before commission. There was an agreement for that TIF, and that was part of the TIF agreement. But, other than that, no.
Okay.
There was not, that I'm aware of.
Well, let's put that on our to-do list, that what we need to do is, you know, and I don't mean to make light of it, I just smiled when I said that, but, for God's sake, you know, the transparency that the public is demanding at government at all levels, that's gotta be a must. Yeah.
President Dartis, I have one more comment. This particular one, you know, you guys talk about cart before the horse. This one, they finished the bathrooms and created a purchase agreement for us to buy it. So they're telling us, if you want it, this is what it'll cost and this is what we'll do. If you don't want it, that's fine. So I mean, that they have to tell us what it's worth to them. We can't tell them. They tell us and we're like, okay, so then now it's a commission decision, you decide. Do you want this amenity for $319,000 with no other costs for however long, or do you not? And that's all there is to it.
So to the Epic people, the gentleman raised a good question. During events, is there full-time custodial staff within that building that will be checking and monitoring the bathrooms?
Not within the building, but there will be for the event.
Say again, please.
Not within the building, but for the event there will be, yes.
Very, very good, thank you. Commissioners, additional questions? Comments?
I just wanna, make the one comment again. Tim mentioning are we riding that fine line with bathrooms? And I just want to also make the comment about, you know, people talk about necessity, is it needed or not needed? Well, you know, like the mayor said, that's a vague road. We could go say, well, I guess we don't need parks either. We don't need a library either. That's not a necessity. But we want that. We want those amenities for our children again. We want that stuff. So you can't always just say, is it needed or not? And then, thank you for that. And then, yeah, I'm curious I want to make sure we're following the guidelines with this.
Yeah, so if you compare it to a park, and if you look at it as a park, there's not a requirement for a bathroom. If you look at it as an assembly space, so if you're going to use it for renting out for weddings, going to have concerts there, then look at it like you're looking at the sports arena or the Veterans Memorial Arena. You need to have bathrooms. So that's when we rent out the porta potties and bring them in. So I believe there's a responsibility as an event center or as an assembly place to have those bathrooms. The counts required are somewhat high, so there may be those full events that we'll still have to bring in porta potties. So if there's a concert there, for instance, we may have to bring in porta potties, but we'll have to bring in 6 less. So.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that might have had a thought that they'd like to share with us tonight? Not? All right, commissioners? Any questions, additional questions for Mrs. Fisk? Any last comments?
If there are not, I will make a motion to approve the purchase agreement for the restrooms, locker rooms for the VFW Plaza.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to agree to the purchase agreement of the restroom locker room for the VFW Plaza. Is there any further discussion? Giving you all one more chance. This is a really tough one. That space and that investment that the city has made up to this point, as Mr. Marquardt pointed out, is substantial. Some of it we were involved in, some of it we weren't. Pioneer Place, Cheyenne, and now the firm. But the fact remains that the investments are there. The city has made a commitment, and this is a really tough vote for me because I do not like the numbers coming in after the fact, just like Commissioner Jurdovic doesn't. But for the investment that we have, placed on Sheyenne Street, it is really troubling that we don't have facilities for it. And the difficulty that we put on the VFW when we have social events there. So, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the purchase agreement, restroom, locker room for the VFW Plaza, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Passes on a 3-2 vote. The agreement is approved. Item number 13 is the engineer's report. Mr. Scott.
I'm sorry, we have one
Good
more
Lord,
item. Sorry.
I'll tell you what,
Oh, we got one more.
Emily, what? Not of mine.
That, the next item on there is the purchase agreement,
This one, purchase agreement. So you're gonna-
purchase policy, I mean.
My apologies. Emily told me at the beginning of the meeting she turns into a pumpkin at 7 o'clock and wanted us to be done at 7. And there's been nothing else on my mind. So, Mrs. Fisk, please.
Okay, thank you very much. In your packet, you had the purchase agreement. I had previously circulated that with all of you, got your comments and your feedback, and incorporated them into the document. This document was initially created by our city attorney, John Shockley, following North Dakota Century Code and the practices that we use currently within the city of West Fargo. After it came out, I've had more questions, staff have asked questions, and so at this time, I'm requesting that you table this particular item, and I'm requesting that a commissioner sit on a committee that would be the commissioner, John Shockley, Tim Solberg, and myself, to review all the details of the purchasing policy before we bring it back to commission.
Okay, how do you want to handle that? You want a motion, or just?
I move we table it.
Commissioner Olson moves the table. Is there a second?
Second. Go ahead. I've been doing it now.
Commissioner Jurdovic seconds. Been moved and seconded to table, the purchasing agreement, or the purchasing policy, excuse me. Is there any further discussion?
Do we want to name the commissioner who's going to sit on?
We do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other discussion? Do I have a volunteer from the commission that would like to sit on that?
I would.
Commissioner Jurdovic is appointed.
I'm okay
Is
with
everybody
that.
else?
I'm okay.
Yeah,
No.
okay. Hey, Commissioner Jurdovic is appointed. Okay,
Oh, I take a vote.
all right. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. You look like you were taking charge, so go with it. All those opposed, say no. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to remind you that as Commissioner Jurdovic sits on this group that we go through, this is not staff policy. This is your policy to guide staff on what we do. So it has to be something that you're comfortable with, and then we just carry it out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're on engineer.
Where the hell's mine? The agenda I was handing did not have that agenda item on it. So Emily, you amended it, yeah, I printed it out Friday. So my apologies if I seem like I'm really dazed and confused up here, but I did not have that on my agenda. Item number 14, engineer's report. Mr. Scott.
Well, thank you, Commissioner President Dartis, members of the commission. Well, for fear of several pumpkins coming up here in the next few minutes, I'm going to keep this brief. To touch on the downtown Cheyenne Street project, I do want to point out we have a public opportunity, or public input meeting, June 23rd, I believe, right, Melissa? Yes, June 23rd. So it's just a follow-up. We had a public meeting before the project started. We wanted to have one after each phase completed. With the start of Phase 2 now, we've scheduled a meeting to just provide an update to the public. We hope for a good turnout. We'll see what happens. We do have bi-weekly public meetings as well, but those are held around the lunch hour, so maybe a little more challenging to get to those. Otherwise, everything else is going, pretty well. You know, of course, starting phase 2 ahead of time is a good thing. So, with that, I'm just gonna ask the commissioner if there's any questions I can help answer.
Commissioners, questions for Mr. Scott?
One quick
Commissioner Olson?
Phase 1 will be 100% complete. Just about when will we open up, Cheyenne Street from 7th to 4th? Will be approximately...
Yep, so my understanding is that there's some, concrete work to be done this week. I'm hopeful that within the next week or two after that, we should be able to open things back up, but, you know, I don't know for sure what that's gonna look like, so.
One other question.
Please.
I was coming down 13th Avenue this afternoon and saw work being done on the walk path from 13th going north. Can't remember the name of that, but, run into any problems or anything like that? Things going smooth?
Things are going smooth. That has been a little bit slower project this year. They are working on that bike path going over Drain 45. The first phase here is from 13th Avenue to 7th Avenue. They did get a pedestrian crossing done on, you know, one of those raised crossings. That's complete. My understanding is the storm sewer stuff that they were doing is now complete, so they're really focusing on getting the path installed. So hopefully see progress in the next month here.
Thank you.
Additional questions for Mr. Scott? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 14 is the City Administrator's Report. Mrs. Fisk.
Good evening again, Commission President and Commissioners. I only have a couple items, and then I'm going to have Tim Solberg, our Assistant Administrator, come up here and talk to you about a really interesting project idea. On July 5th, it's supposed to be a commission meeting date. That's actually a holiday because of the 4th of July being on a Sunday. The holiday falls on the 5th. And so I wanted to know if you wanted to move the commission meeting to the 6th, or if there was a different day that you wanted to do that.
What is the meeting prior to that? What's the date?
Oh, Lord, June 21st.
5th is the one, so it'd be, yeah, okay, I'm fine.
Okay, so July 6th.
Being it's
Do you need a motion?
holiday week, well, just a moment. Do we want to consider the following week? I don't know what
Anything else back? What's the calendar show?
Yeah, I probably won't even be here if it's the 5th anyway, so, or the 6th.
You know,
Okay, well, then we can either have it with 3 of them, or we can...
Let's push it to the next week.
Would that be a problem? I'm sorry.
What you gonna say, the next week, Monday?
If you moved it to the 12th, then if you had 2 more weeks in between, then it'd be on the 26th, and then August is on the 2nd. So there'd be only a week in between one of those times, or else you only have one meeting in July, however you want to look at it.
Mr. Scott, do you have something that you want to share with us?
I do. I apologize for sneaking up on you.
No, that's all right.
But Jim just reminded me that we do have a Special Assessment Commission meeting scheduled on July 12th at 5:30 p.m. So.
Let's just have it on the 6th, and if we can make it, we can, I guess. If we don't, it'll be a quorum, right? I'm okay with that. Mayor, I guess.
Commissioners, is that a possibility that we'll have a quorum on the 6th?
I would be here on the 6th.
I'll be here.
I can be here on the 6th.
Okay.
Okay, all right. The only other item I have is, at the last commission meeting, you approved the 2021 event request for public liquor consumption, and on there, it included cruise nights and the street fair, and it listed the street fair location as Sheyenne Street, and we are unable to hold that event on Sheyenne Street, so we're moving it to Blue Stem, south of 31st, up to 32nd and beyond. And so I just need to get approval from you, get a motion that you allow public alcohol consumption on June 19th till 6 p.m., from 10 to 6 p.m. for the street fair in that area.
I'd make that motion.
Commissioner, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George, it's been moved and seconded to approve June 19th for that event. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You have that approval, Mrs. Fisk.
Okay. Now Tim Solberg will come and talk to you about bird scooters.
Bird scooters.
Bird Scooters is a company that's interested in entering the state of North Dakota. They've made it to Bismarck and are looking at Fargo and Moorhead. It's a company that provides motorized scooters throughout the community, similar like a Uber or a Lyft, or a bike share. You hop on the scooter if you have the app, you swipe it and you get to ride it until you want to, I guess, and leave it where you want to leave it. In order to incorporate this into our community, we would have to engage in a memo of understanding whereby city has no liability, no cost. They have their own staff that runs that. And then also change a couple ordinances that would allow for the scooters to operate either within the streets or sidewalks, whatever we might decide is appropriate. So I would have been here in May with this. Our traffic engineer under Dustin has been working with the other metro cities to make sure that we look at the safety aspects of having this. I've reached out to police and public works with a limited amount of concern so far, but before we spend money with having our attorney work up the ordinance amendments and the MOU, I want to make sure that you, as a commission, are comfortable with this type of mobility option in the city of West Fargo.
And the only cost would be, legal?
Yep.
Commissioner Jurdovic?
One quick, I'm not sure if this is a comment or a question, but when I was in San Antonio the last time, walking down the Riverwalk, and about every 20 feet, you'd see a scooter laying in the bottom of the river. Because they, I mean, I'm not kidding you.
Yep.
You could have pulled a lot of scooters out of that river. I realize that's not an expense to us, but maybe it is if there's a bunch of junk in our river. So, and maybe that wouldn't happen here.
Probably a management comment.
Our river's not
on them.
accessible as the Riverwalk.
Yeah.
In San Antonio, it's mainly people's backyards. So I guess it's not maybe an issue, but I'm just.
To me, it's a management thing. Like when I spoke to the company, Commissioner Jurdovic, what we put in that MOU is really what we would be controlling them by. So if they fail to pick up their scooters that are dropped in our river, drop the MOU.
Mr. Shockley, we demoted you.
Thank you, Commission President. So, in looking at what the Bird Scooters has been approaching the Metro regarding this program, and I took a quick look at what some of the other communities have done, and they charge a pickup fee. So if there's loose scooters anywhere, the city charges them every month. And I don't know why Minneapolis chose, it's like $67 a scooter. I don't know how they came up with that precise amount, but that's the amount they charge. We could incorporate something like that into our ordinance. They also are required to keep them out of the right-of-way so they're not sitting around. Some of the concerns I've heard Metro-wide have been, well, what if there's loose scooters everywhere? The river issue has come up more in Fargo and Moorhead about people throwing scooters in the river. I think they would lose money if the scooter goes in the river, but obviously somebody's got to pick it out of the river. So, we can put all kinds of things in the ordinance.
It's not honestly a huge concern of mine. It was just something noteworthy and that I thought I would throw out there.
Yeah, and it is, some people get kind of annoyed by seeing these scooters all over and annoyed with the traffic, so we weren't going to engage in any sort of direction to John until we heard from you.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. When they rent them, though, don't they, have to use a credit card or something?
Yeah.
Or don't they put like a down payment or something?
No, they just leave it. Their model is to be simple.
They have their credit card number, so you'd think if they wouldn't return it, the company would charge them for that scooter.
But it's just, it's geolocated where it's at, so that if it's there and somebody else comes up and picks it up and throws it in the river, you're not liable to that charge.
Oh, I see what
I
you're
could
saying.
scooter to Sandy's Donuts,
I see,
and then you could pick it up and throw it in the river.
Okay, well, I'd rather throw it in my car and take it to the lake, I guess, if that's the case then.
So, Tim, are you looking for an action item here to move forward with,
An action item would be great. A head nod that you want us to continue with this process is probably adequate, but judging from tonight, I sure like the motion, I think.
consensus that we just go ahead with this and we'll have a vote on it, an action item on it when we have the proposal. All right,
Is that what you want, Tim, or do you want to vote now, you said?
Hey, I mean, a vote would be great. We'll take a vote.
all right.
I'll make a vote, I'll make a motion.
Is
We
there a
move forward.
second? Yeah, everybody's getting gun shy. Then we have a motion. Is there a second?
Eric.
Commissioner Jurdevig seconds. Been moved and seconded to continue to move forward with the discussion on the bird scooters as presented this evening by Mr. Soberg. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Correspondence, Mrs. Fisk?
Sorry about that. I handed out to each of you some correspondence. What I plan on doing going forward is, give you some of the correspondence, in other words, the emails that I receive and send out and, that are inquiries, and so you know what kind of questions we're answering as staff and some of the things we're up to. So, that's why you have more in there than normal. So, if you have any questions once you review it, you can let me know.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisk. Questions for Mrs. Fisk on this? Mrs. Fisk, we got one this morning. Cass County Commission is asking us to appoint a commissioner to be on the county commission boundary lines on the redistricting.
Yes, that's in the back of your packet of,
Okay.
of communication items. Thank you. I'm sorry I forgot that.
But they, one of us is, a West Fargo City Commissioner, needs to be appointed to that, and we might as well take care of it and get it back to him who that person's gonna be.
Not me.
I'll do it, if you want me to.
I don't care. Yeah, go ahead. You want me to make the motion on that? Do you need a motion?
Tim, would you, or Tim, Tina, would you please respond to Mr. Wilson, County Administrator? He's the one that sent the correspondence that, I'll represent.
I'll send an email to him right away in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other correspondence? Or none? Okay. Any non-agenda items? Anybody, any of the staff? Any of the commissioners? Anyone from the public? Chief, we don't have to have an investigation of who stole my agenda. Simmons had it. He just gave it back to me just now. Good thing to have during the course of a meeting. All right. Commissioner Simmons.
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson.
Second.
We've moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. Good evening. Thank you.
The next meeting I'll probably zoom in. I have a flight that I think I'll
Hope
be over.
they get that.
Okay. But I'm certain I can probably zoom though. Yeah.